Well, hello everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 261. Thanks so much for joining me. Today's guest is Dorianne Laux. She'll be here in about 5 minutes. But before we get in, I should say that Rattle's a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry and know you do too. So please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. Now, as always, we're going to start out with our Poets Respond poet. And that poet today is Laura Tanenbaum, who has a fun poem. I mean, at least I thought it was fun. I don't get a lot of these emails, but I know that everybody else does. So let's talk about it. Here she is, Laura Tanenbaum. Hey, Laura, how you doing?
Me.
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's good to see you. And I think you've been in Rattle before, but this is the first time in Poets Respond. And you had a found poem, which is always fun. We haven't had a found poem in a bit. So tell us how this poem came to be.
Well, I am somebody who I don't respond well to the news. I'm in a lot of very profound despair about the state of the world, as many of us are. So when I have the opportunity to use humor, I try to. And I know a lot of people work in politics. I'm politically engaged, so I am somebody who gets a ton of political texts, and I tried to turn them from an annoyance into an amusement because I was noticing there's some interesting rhetorical things going on in them. They have a mode of address that poets, I don't know, want to be cautioned from or be wary of in terms of increased rhetorical desperation in their direct address and apostrophe and various addresses to the readers. I've started to find them entertaining, so I did an experiment of when I got them to just pull a phrase from each one and see what I could compile. And I gave myself like a 48-hour window. And I had to stop after like a day because I get so many of them. So this was all from texts that I got within 24 hours of each other.
Oh, that's so fun. So there was one. I was wondering that because there's so much. There's sort of it feels like they go together in a way that you did the found poem, but then there are these leaps that are surprising between them. So there's actually one line per spam email.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's hear this. What if I
Okay.
cautioned you? Yeah, go
So
ahead.
this is What If I Cautioned You? And it's a found poem from Fundraising Texts. Can I tell you about my family's farm? We stood together under a huge tent, a bit longer than usual. More butterflies than a freaking garden. Is there anything I can say? What if I told you? Or what if I reminded you? Or what if I cautioned? Cruelty and chaos. I can't even begin to comprehend. Revenge and retribution. Stop. 13 million, 35 million, 5 now, 10 now, 20 before midnight, 109,201, any other amount, anything at all. Last chance. Stop to end.
Yeah, stop to end. That is so great. That is Laura Tenenbaum with "What If I Cautioned You," and I love those numbers too. Part of the fun of reading that poem is thinking about where those numbers might come from. So it's a really fun turn of the poem. Have you done found poems very often, or is that something that relatively new to you?
It is relatively new. I do like, I teach and I'm always looking for little assemblage things that are kind of a fun way in to poems for people who don't think of themselves as poet, like the list and various other ways that people can engage where I say, it's not about how creative you think you are, it's just about observation. But it's one I've taught, but not one I've done a lot. So it was fun to play around in.
Yeah, well, very fun. Thanks for a little bit of levity too in this campaign season. It was a fun poem to be able to share. Thanks for sharing it with us, Laura.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks.
Take care.
Yeah. Once again, it was Laura Tenenbaum with "What If I Cautioned You?" Today's news poem on Rattle.com. If you don't get the news poem by email, please do sign up for our daily poem by email. You'll see that in your inbox and poems like it. I'm going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, which is Dorianne Laux. And I should say, I guess, given the, I'm looking at the chat windows, we were late because my computer was having some kind of glitch. I had to restart it. And that meant starting up all the windows over again, which is a lot of windows. And so it took a bit, but everything was back when I restarted the computer, which was strange. But anyway, we are going to be right back with Dorianne Laux. So sit tight and enjoy some more poetry in just a moment. And we're back. Today's guest is Dorianne Laux. Dorianne first appeared in episode 44 of the Rattlecast. She was also interviewed in issue 8 of Rattle in print way back in the 90s. She's published 2 new books in 2024, Life on Earth, a collection of poems, and Finger Excersizes, which is right here, a book of essays on craft. She's the author of 7 books, including Only as the Day is Long, New and Selected Poems, which was a finalist for the 2020 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry, and The Book of Men, which won the Paterson Prize. And here she is, Dorianne Laux. Hey, Dorianne, how you doing?
Hey, Tim. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. Thanks for coming back. Do you want to start out right away with a poem?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start with the first poem from this new book, Life on Earth, and from Norton. And it's called In Any Event. If we are fractured like stars, bred to shine in every direction, through any dimension, billions of years since and hence. I shall not lament the human, not yet. There is something more to come. Our heart's a gold mine, not yet plumbed, an uncharted sea. Nothing is gone forever. If we came from dust and will return to dust, then we can find our way into anything. What we are capable of is not yet known, and I praise us now in advance.
Yeah, and that poem was In Any Event, kind of an opening poem from Dorianne Laux's new book, Life on Earth. And so, Dorianne, this book came. I'm curious about putting books together and how this book came to be. Because last time we talked a lot about the way poems are sort of you exploring sort of aimlessly until you find that channel of energy and thought, right? And that where you have something to say that's new and interesting and pushing deeper into yourself. So how do you know when you have a book of poems?
Well, you know, when you have so many poems that you can't even find them on your computer anymore. You know, I mean, they're just all over the place. So you collect them into a file finally so that they're all in one place. And then you give that to your husband, who says, you better send that file to me, because if anything happens to your computer, I'm going to get in trouble for it. And so you send it to him. He disappears into the, the studio for a little while and comes back out and says, you have a book, and I go, really? And he says, yes, here's the first section, the second section, and I read it and it's great. But this particular one, I had 20 new poems about my mother. Mm-hmm. And she had died, and I had just gone into a flurry of writing poems about her. And when I tried to fit them into a traditional book, they wouldn't really fit, because they so overwhelmed all the other poems. You couldn't just kind of, put them all together or place them throughout. So he said, well, why don't you do a new and selected? And that way you can put all 20 poems in the back of the book, kind of like a little chapbook of the new poems. It's a great idea. So he chose the poems from each volume, and then I put the 20 poems in order in the back. And it came together. That was new and selected. For Life on Earth, once again, I just kind of gave it to him. I knew what the first poem was going to be, and I knew it was going to be In Any Event, and I knew Life on Earth was going to end it. And then he did everything in between. So the moral here is get a husband that knows how to put a book together.
Well, that's pretty good advice, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I really am not very good at it. I'm good at writing a poem, but not in trying to figure out how they go together. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the last episode you were on was right during the pandemic. It was the spring, I think it was May of 2020. And I'm wondering, how much of that influenced the poems here? Like, people talk about that time as a big way of, it changes the way we look at the world. And it was a big, one of our generational experiences. Did it change the way you see things as a poet? And did that appear itself in any way in this book?
Yeah, well, it reminded me of it once again, of how fragile and vulnerable we all are, and that, the earth is warming up, it's flooding, it's creating a lot of problems where people, plague. That was one of the big issues in other times. And so there's that. But I didn't know anyone personally who died. I knew how many people in the United States were dying and then all over the world. And it's just too big to comprehend, But on the other side of it was the fact that you were sequestered at home alone. And what else are you going to do if you're a poet but write poems? Mm-hmm. So we both wrote a lot of poems during the pandemic. That's how we kind of stayed sane, was by writing almost every day. And so I got a book out of it. He got a book out of it. I ended up getting this book, The Finger Exercises, out of that whole pandemic time. Mm-hmm. And I have a few pandemic poems in the new book, In Life on Earth. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I chose any of those, but I do have a few. Yeah. Well, no, I think I'm going to read Thermopolium, which is sort of a...
Yeah, that kind of is. Well, let's hear the next poem you'd like to read.
Okay. It's Thermopolium. Right?
Okay. That's
one. Or was it Spirit Level?
Well, we have Spirit Level. We could skip to Thermopolium if you want.
Yeah, we could, since we were just talking about it. And it came from should have sent it to Rattle, but it came from a Daily Star article that was titled Ancient Snack Stall Uncovered in Pompeii. And I've always been a big fan of Pompeii since I was a little girl and read about them in my childcraft books, mm-hmm. Saw the pictures. And so to see new things uncovered was really exciting for me. The Thermopolium. Even in 79 AD, people loved street food. All the young Romans flocking around, the sizzling terracotta pots, the stalls frescoed with chickens and hanging ducks, hot drinks served in ceramic, two-handled pateras, filled with warm wine and spices. Their sandaled feet glimmered as they milled around, waving hellos, smudging one another's cheeks with kisses, murmuring gossip, complaining about the crazy rise in the price of wheat, soups and stews, skewered meats, stacks of flatbread, honey cakes and candy made with figs. They sprawled on the steps or sat near a neighbor's open door, stood under a blur of windows, someone playing a lyre, barefoot children singing the Ode of Horace, just like New York after the pandemic, or before the pandemic, before the many retreated and retired to their living rooms to watch the news on a loop, alone with a cat or dog, a furry stay against the nothing of loneliness, their dreams, a passport to fear. I used to see the excavated people of Pompeii, frozen in time, caught curled in sleep or kneeling, a couple fucking, though there is one of a possible father propped in what looks like an easy chair, a mother bouncing a child on her lap, as if they decided in their final moments to be happy, to go into the afterlife covered in ash, buried alive by joy.
Yeah, and that was Thermopolium, a kind of Poetry Spawn poem from that news about an ancient snack stall uncovered in Pompeii. I do remember some Poetry Spawn poems coming in that week. I don't think we picked one of them, but it was such an interesting news story that sort of asks you to turn it into a poem.
Yeah, and I don't normally read the Daily Star, so I have no idea how I came across it, but my good friend Jane Hirschfield also saw it. Mm-hmm. So it must have been syndicated somehow.
Yeah, and she was on last year. Yeah, she was on last year, and she read that poem too. So anybody can go back to that episode and see her take on the Thermopolium. What was it? Do you think was so compelling about that story? Like certain things call us to write about them, and I'm always curious what that calling is. What do you think it was?
Well, like I said, for me, it was because I had always been interested in Pompeii. And so the fact that something new, I mean, I know all those photographs, I know all the history and lore. And so I was anxious to see them. And then I saw this one that looked so modern because it really did look like the father was sitting in an easy chair, kind of a recliner, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'm sure he wasn't, but it looked like it with it covered in ash. And the mother looked on like she was on a little day cot or, you know, chaise lounge or something with her baby. And it was just a really comforting. And, you know, a lot of those older photographs of people showed them in agony or like the dog, you know, all curled up just in, you know, agony, being burned to death. But they didn't. They looked so joyful. And I was just so struck by that. And I don't know what Jane said, but she may have said something similar. There's something very joyful about that couple.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and reread that poem to know, but it very well could
And you
be.
can find the picture online of the family, you know, that if you look at that article, because it had photographs.
Yeah. So I'm wondering about, you know, you talked about diving more, you know, having that time during the pandemic to write so much poetry. And you are one of the founding faculty at an MFA program at Pacific University. And I wonder if you found that in your students over the last, you know, the last 4 years that, you know, because we at Rattle, there were times where we would get 1,000 submissions a week just for that one news poem slot during the pandemic. I mean, it was such a huge surge in poetry. And I'm wondering if you think that continued on. You know, do you find students came to poetry because of the pandemic? I think back to 9/11, that was one of the things, you know, that sparked a lot of poetry and got poetry going for a lot of people. Do you find something similar?
You know, to tell you the truth, it's not like it came up, so I wouldn't know. You know, it wasn't like they told me, oh, I started writing during the pandemic. You know, I mean, I always ask people, when did you start writing? And you know, most of the time people say, oh, I've been writing for a lot of time, but I just decided finally to do an MFA. And there are a few people that sometimes say, oh, recently, you know, like I'm a woman in a workshop now who just started writing a year ago. And but that's not so common. Usually people have been writing, but they're finally ready to do something more with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I would hazard to guess. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people that were doing things they hadn't done in years, like putting together jigsaw puzzles and what, you know, right? I mean, so.
Yeah, well, it does. You know, I think so many people, you know, have that as an ambition and a dream, you know, to be a writer. And then when something big happens, you get time to reflect on your life and what you haven't done yet. So I think that's something that probably.
And I do remember
people,
a few pandemic poems, you know, here and there, but not very many.
Oh,
really.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, let's go back a little bit and do spirit level, which we skipped over from the book.
Sure. You know, like I said, that prior new and selected had the 20 new poems about my mother. And she's always been my muse. You know, I've always written poems about her. But after I did that, I thought, nah, great. I don't have to write poems about my mother anymore. I'm done. So really, the first poem in this book is about my mother. I mean, I'm never going to stop writing about her. And I've got a few poems for her in this book. But this one has a quote from Gary Snyder, who says, when making an axe handle, the pattern is not far off, which of course implies that you're using an axe to make an axe, you know, you're carving with it. Spirit level. My mother was either horizontal on the couch or vertical, a plumb line from her spine to the top of her head to the ceiling that spins when she drinks. Alcohol and an air bubble trapped, sealed, and fixed inside her, her face carved from wood, a tear gliding slowly down the curve of her cheek. My mother was once a spirit in this world. Once she breathed for me, above me, beside me, behind me. Now I feel her warm breath on my neck, summer nights, peering over my shoulder as I write every poem, whispering, let me in. I let her in. I remember every time she picked me up or set me down, put me to bed or woke me from dreams. And now I see how my whole life has been a dream, one she built for me from the ground up. Her daughter, my mother, the axe, beautiful tool with which she shaped me. A house, much like the one she lived in, but smaller, fewer rooms, a tiny, unusable attic, and a cluttered basement. I let her in, like she let me in. She became my carpenter, stonemason, and bricklayer, piling me up cell by cell, the blade that shaped my legs, my arms, my surveyor. No right. She used herself as a template, her genes tough, her organs elastic, her eyes and nose, forehead and mouth. And when her body, from which my body was made, was slipped into the hot retort, I burned too. She refused the beveled casket, the oiled mahogany box, glass drawer for the dead, wanted only the fury of fire, the blue-white flames unmaking her with their licking tongues. House her grandmother built, and her grandmother before her, all of them giving what they had been given. The hardwood floors, staircases and banisters, their deepest cupboards, their heavy doors flung wide so the breeze I would be could blow through.
Yeah, another beautiful poem that was spirit level by Dorianne Laux from her new book, just out this January, Life on Earth. And Dorianne, you mentioned your mother being your muse, and one of the things that I try to give people as advice when we do our workshops is that you should always be writing to somebody. You know, it can sort of be anybody, but that's how the intimacy is built, you know, by having the sense that's what a voice almost means. It's like the voice of someone speaking to another. And then we have that consistency to it and a sense of place within it that sort of resonates. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but there's something to that. And I've always wondered if you feel like you're writing your poems to your mother in addition to so many poems about her. Like, do you think poems that are not about her are also to her in the way that you're speaking to her, would you say?
Well, any poem about the family. My mother's always there somewhere in the background, you know, and like I say, she's always sort of whispering to me to let her in. And she loved poetry, she loved music, she loved art. And she was so happy and proud that I was a poet, you know. And she didn't always love every poem that I wrote for her, but she loved that I wrote poetry and that it was about her, you know. It was a very egotistical, about, you know, vain woman. But I think in some ways I am, because she loved it so much. And so she's always sort of there. But on the other hand, I'm writing them to my daughter, my husband, my family members, my best friends, right, you know, people who have died. But also, I mean, I started writing poems because I was reading and I wanted to say something back to all those people who had written to me in their books, you know, and I kind of wanted to have a conversation with them and continue that conversation they started with their stories and novels and poems. And so I'm always writing to them, to those, you know, I'm writing to Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman and Sharon Olds and Carolyn Forche and, you know, all the poets that I love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that makes sense too. I mean, talking about how people are inspired to become poets, it's so often that. It's wanting to join in that grand dialogue where we're all sitting down across time and space and speaking to each other in that deeper way that poetry is. Yeah. Well, speaking of your mother too, the Finger Exercises, the book of craft essays, is inspired by that too. The finger exercises you're referring to are your mother's finger exercises on the piano. And and it's a beautiful way to you know, organize a book of essays. How did this book come to be?
The pandemic, you know. Well, prior to that, I teach at Pacific University, that low residency program we were talking about, and every semester you have to give a craft talk. Well, not every, but every few semesters you've got to give one. And I would have to think up a craft talk about some aspect of poetry that I thought the students would be interested in. And so I started, writing up these talks. And then I had them all in a file.
Mm-hmm.
All these talks I'd given at Pacific. And so I thought, well, wait a minute. All I have to do is go and clean them up, put them in an order, write an introduction, write an ending, and I'll have a craft book,
Mm-hmm.
And the Poet's Companion did so well. And then Kim Adonicio, who wrote it with me, she wrote a craft book called Ordinary Genius. And I thought, well, if Kim could do it, I can do it, So I wrote Finger Excersizes for Poets. And I'm telling you, it's selling like hotcakes.
Well, that's great. It's definitely a wonderful read. The brevity of the essays, too, is really nice. That you can get through and learn a great nugget of poetry wisdom in a very short span of time. I love, too, your Why I Write little opening essay there where, I don't know, you... well, would you mind? Do you want to read that last paragraph? Because I think that is such a mantra for poetry. I think it'd be fun to highlight that if you don't mind.
The last paragraph?
Yeah, the last paragraph. I write to add my voice to the sum of voices, which we were just talking about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Why I write. I write to add my voice to the sum of voices, to be part of the choir. I write to be one sequin among the shimmering others, hanging by a thread from the evening gown of the world. I write to remember. I write to forget myself, to be so completely immersed in the will of the poem that when I look up from the page, I can still smell the smoke from the house burning in my brain. I write to destroy the blank page, unravel the ink, use up what I've been given, make something new of it, and give it away. I write to make the trees shiver at the sliver of sun slipping down the lip of the axe blade. I write to hurt myself again, to dip my fingertip into the encrusted pool of the wound. I write to become someone else, that better, smarter self that lives inside my dumbstruck twin. I write to invite the voices in, to wrestle with the angel, to feel the devil gather on its haunches and rise. I write to hear myself breathing. I write to be doing something while I wait to be called to my appointment with death.
Yeah, that's just such a wonderful explanation of why we do what we do. And that's from, of course, Finger Exercises for Poets, the new craft book from Dorianne Laux. And given how much success you had with the Poet's Companion, but that's almost over 25 years old now. What did you want to do with this book that was different from that? Because that book is still selling. I looked up, I happened to see on Amazon that it's still ranked very high in sales. It's one of the best books on writing poetry to come out in decades, and it's still selling. So what did you want to do that was different with this book?
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, for one thing, I wanted it to be fully in my voice, And for instance, to have that freedom to just kind of, it's hard for me to write prose. It's not something that comes naturally to me, but I can write a poem. And so a lot of the chapters would be like that, like a little poem inside a piece of prose, And so I wanted that freedom just to be able to do whatever I wanted to do. And I just wanted it to reflect the things I had thought about over the years. What is writing? Why do we do this? Who are my favorite poets? What do I want to write a craft talk about? What poets do I want to include? One of my aims was to include lots of women. Mm-hmm. There are the preponderance of authors in the book, poets, are women. Secondly, to bring poets who have died, bring their poems to the fore. So that, somebody like Larry Levis or Deborah Diggs or Belle Waring or, they're gone. And yet they had wonderful poems. And I don't want those voices to be lost. You know, they don't have the advantage we do of going out and doing readings, writing new books, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to sort of do that for them. So
Yeah.
that was another aim of the book that we didn't really think about much with the Poet's Companion, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We thought more, I mean, that came out of me and Kim doing workshops where we would have a theme, you know, and so we had a lot of material that we put together.
Mm-hmm. Do you think in the last, the time since the Poet's Companion, you've had any big changes in the way you approach poetry? Were there any revelations or learning experience, or do you think you kind of had it pegged down then, and this is like different ways of explaining, you know?
I think I'm more free
Mm-hmm.
in a way. I think I had a preconceived notion of what a poem should be, how long it should be, how it should look on the page, you know. Whereas I'm allowing myself a little more freedom. I'm working in form a little bit here and there, just dipping my toe. But you know, that's very new for me. I love form, and I every year I try to run a sonnet, and every year I fail. You know, but I have found ways to get around that. You know, one sonnet I write is by a sonnet by John Donne, sonnet number 7, and I just use his end words that already rhyme, so I don't have to. He's already rhymed them for me. And then all I have to do is write a line to meet that word
Mm-hmm.
and write another line to meet that word. And that I can do, you know, because I also love to do puzzles, you know. So that's just a nice puzzle for me to do. But you know, you don't always get lucky like that. I tried to write 18 more so I could have, you know. No, didn't work. I only got the one out of it.
Well, let's see. I want to make sure we get to all the poems. Let's hear another poem, and then we'll talk some more. Winter Brother's up next.
Yeah, my brother died when I was 12, and but he left a great impression on me. And the other thing you do during the pandemic is you go out and look at the stars in your backyard a lot because you're sure not going out for the night. So this is Winter Brother. These nights I walk out and look up at Orion, my winter brother, spellbound each time I trace him to wholeness from the star on his right shoulder to the star on his left, down to form his torso, lower down his little skirt. I know his right hand holds a club, but I replace it with 2 splayed arrows pointing up, in his left a lion's pelt that for me becomes a bow, from hunter to archer, just like that. And why not? Whoever made him up is lost to history's shimmering distance, and I'm here now in my dark backyard, a splash of ghost sibling lilies glowing at my feet. I like to think he's my older brother who died far from home on a lonely road, his broken body found in a muddy gutter, swollen with rain. That's how it is down here on the death-packed earth, where nothing is eternal. The body's buried, haunch to haunch, beneath the indifferent dirt. I remember his handwriting on a postcard, the lines squashed between the address and the card's cut edge. I miss you. I love you. I saw some sights today you wouldn't believe. On the other side, a wall of etched bricks, a statue of Karl Marx's fat head, his beard of gray stone. When he died, I felt alone. Some part of me went cold, some echo following me like a false star. So I lifted my brother into the sky where I could ride on his belt as he strode over the 7 continents, sharing an eyedropper of water between us.
Yeah, and that was Winter Brother by Dorianne Laux from her new book, Life on Earth. And going back to the craft book, though, Dorianne, we have a whole lot of prompts in that book, and really interesting, sort of detailed prompts that almost work like essays, the prompt themselves. And maybe, do you write from prompts yourself? I mean, how much of the finger exercises are things that you do?
Yeah. I mean, I don't ask anybody to write a prompt, do a prompt that I wouldn't myself do and find interesting and think, oh, this would be fun, And I learned very early on with my first poetry teacher, Steve Cowett, who would give us, a bunch of words and say, write a poem, And so over time, I added things to it like, well, use a season or a color or use this phrase somewhere in the poem or, I would slowly add new things to the mix. And I love writing from prompts. And again, my friend Jane Hirschfield, no way would she ever do that. She says, no, you can't do that. But, I've written, all my books have poems that are prompts in them. And, but for the people who do like to have that kind of nudge into writing a poem, I think that they're fun. Again, I'm a puzzle maker. I just love putting the puzzle of the words together to make some sort of sense.
Yeah, well, how I think of it is that, a poetry is a kind of way of playing, and you have to get to that childlike place where you're just playing with language. And so however you can get there the way to get there is the right way. And so if you get there through preconceived prompts, and then the other way you can think about it is that everything in life is a prompt. If you're not writing from prompts, you're prompted by your day, by a line of, something you heard reading a newspaper or crossing the street, And so in a way, we're always prompted, whether or not we're prompted by, coherent prompts that were put together for us or otherwise. What's interesting, though, is these prompts are very long. There are a lot of detail, a lot of ideas that you push forward. I mean, the prompts, when we do the prompts on the prompt lines at the end of the show, Katie's prompts are pretty short. She usually tries to have sort of two focuses. There's like maybe write a prose poem with persona set in the future today. So there's that, really short. And your prompts are much longer, though. They're paragraphs long. So why is it that you like the prompts to go in that direction?
Because I can't stop talking. I don't know. I mean, I like complex prompts. Like I say, I kept adding and adding and adding to this really simple prompt my teacher gave me so long ago. I just love to pile things up. And also, not everybody is inspired by a particular prompt. But if you throw a lot of things in, there might be something, that I even say is sort of a offhand comment, or just a fast association or something that somebody might go, oh, well, that's a good idea, or I love that word, or, and, but also one of the reasons I use prompts is because it frees up your unconscious mind. Your conscious mind is so busy trying to do all the things I've told you to do. I got to get this word and this phrase, oh God, this color, that your unconscious mind goes, she's busy. She's busy thinking about something else. So I'm going to sneak in and say something that she's too afraid to say, that she's too embarrassed to say, that she doesn't know how to say. The unconscious is much smarter than you are. So you just have to open the door and let it in. And I think prompts will do that.
Yeah, it's interesting because to me, I think formal poems are the same way. When you're focused on the meter and the rhyme and where that has to come in, it's like some kind of boondoggle almost to keep your left brain that's fixed and obsessive about certain things, just distracted to let the surprise come in. And I think one of the things poets do is find different ways to reach that state where they're letting themselves surprise themselves, which is not an easy thing to do in our day-to-day life when we're talking about the weather or whatever it is. Like I think too about like talking to other parents on the playground, which is something that I used to do a lot, just trying to strike up conversations, move to a small town, and it's always this sort of like nonsense about the weather or whatever, just random things. And then finally someone will say something interesting and then there'll be an interesting conversation but it takes a while to get there. And so a lot of the prompts or the form are just ways to get to the interesting conversation to keep us distracted from ourselves. Yeah. So, well, let's hear another. Actually, we have a request, if you don't mind going off script. It's a persistent request from Cindy Gore asking if you could read the poem Honeymoon and give its origin story. Would you mind doing that? That's on page 26 if you're looking for it.
What? It's on 26?
Yeah. Of Life on Earth, yeah.
Yeah, okay, 26.
And we don't get persistent requests for a poem very often, yeah. So it must be a good one with a good story.
Well, tell her I said thank you. That's great. This is my poem for my husband. We didn't have, he had a heart attack, so I kind of had to marry him for the insurance. And, but it paid off eventually. Honeymoon. We didn't have one, unless you count Paris, 20 years later, after we'd almost given up on the idea. We'd imagined one, long nights beneath a warm celestial sky, you growing your beard, me in a silk turquoise robe, floating, billowing on a deserted beach, foraging for whole sand dollars, jellyfish washed up on the shore, their glittering insides visible, still pulsing through flesh made of glass. But it never happened. We had to work through our vacations, refinance the house, find someone to cut down the cedar that threatened to bury us with each storm. We wanted to make up for the wedding, or lack of one, the granite courthouse steps, the small room with the desk, the flimsy document stamped with a cheap gold seal. Even then, we meant to have a party on the deck, cheese and crackers, fruit plates, sparkling grape cider in plastic cups, our friends on the lawn, calling you the big kahuna, me Mrs. Dynamite, me calling you my sweet dragon, you calling me your little red Corvette. Instead, time found a way to demand each minute, until one night, after you'd gotten a small windfall in the mail, you turned to me and said, I'm going to take you to Paris. Me in my ratty robe and floppy slippers, you in your flannel PJ bottoms and black wife beater, muting the clicker when I said, what? And saying it again. Then we were there in our 60s, standing below the dire Eiffel Tower, its 81 stories of staircases we couldn't possibly climb, its 73,000 tons of puddled iron, you taking my picture for posterity, kissing you beneath the pathway of arch trees, our voices echoing against the 6 million skulls embedded in the stone catacombs, me saying, I guess you weren't kidding, you taking my hand in the rain.
Yeah, and that was Honeymoon by Dorianne Laux from her new book, Life on Earth. And the poet we're talking about there is Joseph Millar, of course. And Joe's going to be on the Rattlecast. I think it's November 3rd after his new book comes out in October. So we're all looking forward to that. Let's talk about this one with the writing process. So do you remember how this poem came to be? Like, when did you know you were going to write about the honeymoon? Is it something that you'd been planning on writing about, or did it come up spontaneously? I'm always curious about that.
Well, I will tell you, it came from a prompt where I had to use the words, let me see, celestial, deserted, what are the other words? The ones I really remember are Big Kahuna, Mrs. Dynamite, Sweet Dragon, and Little Red Corvette. Those were all the names of sushi that I had to use. Uh-huh. And then, other things that I remember are Eiffel Tower. And, as soon as there was the word, use Eiffel Tower, of course I thought of Paris. And of course I thought about my honeymoon. So the prompt actually gave me the subject of the poem, as well as these little silly, old couple kind of things, And and the fact that we never did have one until we were 60 years old seemed just so poignant, that you would go on your honeymoon at 60. And but we went to Paris.
Yeah, well, it definitely is poignant. Yeah, wonderful story. And another thing that's just always prominent in your work is that sense of honesty and authenticity. And that's a great poem that shows that. And I'm wondering if you have a kind of filter for yourself, or like censor for like when you're being honest and authentic as you're writing. And is that a kind of mode you work on getting into? Do you ever find yourself not being honest or authentic in a poem?
I don't know. I mean, that's my place to be honest and truthful and not have to worry about what somebody might say, or, I mean, I'm sure I must have censored myself in some way. I think everybody does. I try to keep it to a minimum, how many times I use curse words, or, I mean, but no, I don't think I ever really think about that. For one thing, I started writing when I was very young, but I didn't really know anything about the world of poetry until I already had written a first book and was 40.
Mm-hmm.
I already had my voice. I hadn't been influenced by a lot, like an MFA program or other poets that I knew, or, it was just me writing. And so I think I developed that voice over a long period of time. And I'm sure when I was in my teens writing poems, I did say things to impress people or to sound cool or smart or whatever. But over the years, I lost that.
Yeah.
You have to at a certain point. You've got to accept reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this is the Titan the show, or I should say, if you're enjoying this conversation and these poems, please do click the like button. It's always the case. We have like 3 times as many people watching as I've clicked like so far. And the more likes to viewers ratio we get, the more the poems spread around and are shared on YouTube and other platforms. So please do click the like button. And also, if you have any questions for Dorianne, there's a bunch of questions in the chat window already. But if you have any, pass them along. Try to put questions in all caps so I can see it, because there are a lot of comments. But I'll pass along some as we go. But let's hear another poem, Dorianne.
Okay, this one is about Marilyn Monroe, who is always a very mythical, mystical, subject for all of us. And of all things, it uses a quote from the Rolling Stones. I watched you suffer a dull, aching pain. Wild horses. Mustangs were bred for stamina, little knock-kneed engines. In the Misfits, they were bred for dog food. Marilyn Monroe was even more beautiful in black and white. When she says she can hear her skin against her clothes, we believe her, are with her in the desert. The Mustangs crest the small hill and appear, wild-eyed, kicking up dust and sagebrush. She watches the men hobble their legs, preparing them for the gunshot, the daggers, the grave, tin cans of dog food in the cupboards of every home in America. Their liquid eyes, ageless, their big hearts peeling like cold bronze bells. This is one roll, not centered around her breasts, her chest cut open, nails in her heart. Not a joke, not a paradise for fantasy. It was her final movie. They found her at home, face down, holding on to a phone. She was born in June and died in August, near the end of summer. White pills spilled on the rug. She always said she liked to sleep. The men who surrounded her eased their glasses down over their noses to look at her in the gymnasiums of their dreams, unable to raise one barbell, one sad cloud. Suddenly tired of their own excuses, one held her feet, one held her shoulders, and they lifted her up.
Yeah, another beautiful poem. That was Wild Horses by Dorianne Laux from her new book, Life on Earth. So we had a question from Jimmy Pappas, if I can find it again. He asked about autographing books, which is something I don't think we've ever asked anybody about in this series.
Yeah.
But yes, when I ask poets to autograph a book, I ask them to write something interesting or poetic or memorable near their name. What would you write for me? Jimmy asks. If I asked you, but I don't know. You don't know Jimmy probably. So, but what do you? But how do you encounter that? Because it's one of those things, I think, kind of like writing blurbs, but less discussed, where I think there's some fretting among authors about what they're going to do on that autograph page.
Yeah, I mean, if I don't know the person at all, it's rather insincere, pretentious, or, to write something about them or to them. And I don't like the idea either of writing a piece of poetry or, whatever. But if I meet them, and I can even just look at them for a moment and say something like, love your glasses, or, love your blue suede shoes, or I don't know, there might be something about them, or we've spoken about something and I remind them of it, that we spoke about. So I definitely do that. But if it just comes in the mail and I don't know that person, it just seems kind of, you know what I mean? Like, I can't think of exactly the right word, but insincere to pretend that I do,
Yeah, especially when poems are such an act of sincerity, That's kind of why the blurb business is so fraught too, because all the blurbs kind of sound the same over time, and we sort of, I mean, what are you going to say other than, other what blurbs are like? So it's its own mode of writing. And I think that the opening, salvo and an autograph is sort of the same way. Another question, Drya Montiado wants to know about writing prompts. He says, what's a writing prompt that you attempted but did not help prompt a poem for you? And did its failure teach you about the difference between a helpful and unhelpful prompt? So are there any failed writing prompts for you?
Well, I always get something. I mean, I always attempt the prompt. That doesn't mean it's going to turn out to be a poem that I want to keep, work on, and eventually publish, But it's never a waste of time. You always learn something from trying to write something, and you especially learn if it's not working, and you're trying to figure out why exactly, even though it's saying what you want to say, it's not saying it beautifully or in a startling new way or using an image that brings that thought to light or life, But I always learn something from writing anything every day.
Yeah.
And so I would say, yes, I've had, quote, failed prompts, but it depends on what you consider failure. I consider writing a poem at all a success.
Yeah, that's
whether
true.
It fails or not. Yeah.
How many poems would you say that you write? Like, what percentage are worth publishing that you actually share versus how many you never see the light of day?
Tiny, small percentage. Yeah, you've got, as Philip Levine used to tell me, you have to be willing to write bad poems. You have to be willing to write poems that you are going to toss in a file that you never look at again. I mean, I always keep them because I respect the effort. And, I don't want them to think that they weren't useful in some way, but I really do just kind of respect the effort that you try to write poems. And what was wasn't there another part to that question, or I lost that.
I think you covered it. I mean, just what you learned from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and the difference between a helpful and unhelpful prompt. That's what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think all prompts are helpful. I don't remember ever feeling like I got, that's a bad prompt. It's just some random shit you're supposed to try to put together, I mean, I don't know. Nothing's ever offended me. I think I've always written prompt.
Yeah. Well, you'd be a great viewer for the Rattlecast, because we have that prompt at the end of the week, always participating. It would be really fun.
Yeah.
All right. So let's hear another one of the poems, Dory.
Let's see. What's the next one we have here? That was Wild Horses. This is
Fig next. Yeah.
Fig. Yeah. Fig. And this has to do with aging, you know. I mean, that's the other thing is we're all getting older. The poems are changing. Now that I'm 70, I'm trying to stay focused on my feet, trying not to trip so I won't break a hip, end up in a hospital surrounded by a swarm of nurses and germs, a plastic container of applesauce, a juice box of prunes, bleachy blankets thin as a wish. I don't want to die like this. A kingdom of white walls, machines beeping beside me, saints appearing in my peripheral vision, offering to escort me to the final door. I want to die bent to the tide, lifting a shell to my ear, or listening to the Duende blues on an old record player, tapping the arm to the next groove when it skips. I don't mind becoming fertilizer, that honorable substance. It's not the darkness I fear. It's the bright lights, needles and ether, the PA system, and the air-conditioned air. I want to die like a criminal in my own provenance, eating the last stolen fig.
Yeah, it's a wonderful ending coming back to the title. So it's Fig by Dorianne Laux from her new book, Life on Earth. And it's a perfect segue to another question from a viewer. Patty Arbor says, Dorianne, can you speak about your endings, which are always unexpected and perfect?
Yay! That's all those failed poems. The endings weren't unexpected or perfect. Believe me, you know, you have to write a lot of bad poems. And you know, I don't know. I mean, I know that a good ending in a poem, truth is beauty, beauty, truth, that's all you need to know. You know, it's like, yeah, that's what I want, you know. I love that feeling when I get to the end of a poem and I feel surprised. I feel like not only that I've discovered something by reading it, but that the writer discovered it along with me. You know, that we went on this journey together and we finished that journey together, you know. And so I work hard on those endings. A lot of times I've ended the poem and I don't even know it yet until I go back and keep reading and say, wait a minute, this is the ending, you know. And it's a much stronger line than what I have now. That's about 5 lines up. You know, I just kept going on because I wanted to make sure everybody got it, or, you know, I wanted to just describe it some more. And that's just kind of, that's almost having too much fun. You know,
Yeah.
you gotta, you know, cut it when the cutting's good. And so I think I have become more adept at identifying those moments in the poem when, okay, I could end here, you know, stopping myself when I realize I've reached the crescendo, you know, of the poem. It's hard to discern that at first, you know. But because I take pleasure in a poem that has a beautiful ending, I want to have a beautiful, surprising ending. Like Frost says, no tears in the reader, no tears in the writer, but no discovery in the reader, no discovery in the writer, no pleasure in the reading. You know, I mean, you can use any word you want. And but no surprise in the reader, no surprise, you know, in the writer either. I mean, they haven't done their full job.
Yeah, yeah. For those poems that haven't found their ending yet, do you re-enter the poem very often and sort of keep working to find where it wanted to go? Or, you know, you mentioned writing a lot and only a few seeing the light of day. Do you start fresh and just abandon the ones that don't have the ending that you were looking for, listening for?
Yeah, sometimes I get a good ending, but the poem is not very good. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like a great last few lines or whatever, but the poem just doesn't work. I know what I mean, and I know what it means to me, but I haven't really transmitted that yet. So I save those kinds of things and then go back to them. But a lot of times it's like I said, just identifying where in the poem it really ends. What's the strongest line? What kind of, you know, at what point does the writer discover something or find true satisfaction, or, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and
But no,
Dr.
it's
Q
fine.
asks here to follow up on that. Do you ever extract something from a bad poem to use it in another
Yeah,
poem? And so if you
yeah,
had that like great ending, but the beginning wasn't great, is there a way that you
right.
can write toward that ending in a different poem and make it work? Is that something you do?
Or you can take that ending and make it the first line of the poem.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
If it's a strong line, right? Well, number one, the poem's starting off with a bang, right? Now you want to see if you can keep upping the ante, keep writing another line that comes up to the strength of that line, and maybe even supersedes it, in some way. But also, a lot of times when we end our poems, we're really just beginning to say what we really want to say. And so often I'll just take that and make it the first line and start again,
Mm-hmm.
start from whole cloth, except for that inspirational last line.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's try it, I mean, with some of those last lines, make it the first and start again.
Mm-hmm. Well, that definitely makes a lot of sense. We have two poems left to share. Do you want to read "I Dare You" and then we'll get to the last one after a bit more conversation.
Yeah, we have I Dare You, which is again my husband, Joseph Millar. This is also an old people poem. I dare you. It's autumn, and we're getting rid of books, getting ready to retire, to move someplace smaller, more manageable. We're living in reverse, age proofing the new house, nothing on the floors to trip over, no hindrances to the slowed mechanisms of our bodies, a small table for two. The world is shrinking, our closets mostly empty, gone the tight skirts and dancing shoes, the bells and whistles. Now, when someone comes to visit and admires our complete works of Shakespeare, the hawk feather in the open dictionary, the iron angel on a shelf, we say take them. This is the most important time of all, the age of divestment. Knowing what we leave behind is like the fragrance of blossoming trees that grow stronger after you've passed them, breathing them in for a moment before breathing them out. An ordinary Tuesday when one of you says, I dare you, and the other one just laughs.
Yeah, another great ending there. Speaking of endings, that's "I Dare You" by Dorianne Laux from her new book "Life on Earth." Maybe this might be a tough question. I'm curious about it. Lisa M. McDougald wants to know, how do you navigate your emotions while sharing intimate poetry tied to memories?
Hard sometimes, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Other times, not a problem at all. You know, for others, it may be a very emotional poem, but for me, I've read it so many times, or I've already kind of written the poem and come to terms with those emotions that are evident in the poem, but not necessarily any evident anymore in me. Although on occasion you're struck by surprise with how overwhelmed you become by a line you wrote 10 years ago, right? And suddenly you're back there and you're right. And you suddenly feel that emotion just come pouring through. And that's hard, when you're reading a poem. I've also poems by other people. I teach workshops and I use poems that I love in the Finger Exercises for Poets book. And just a couple days ago, I was doing a workshop reading a poem, and I got toward the end of it and I started to tear up, I mean, my voice got shaky. And it just hit me again how beautiful it was and how meaningful it was to me. It's why I love it,
Mm-hmm.
And you can't predict when that's
Yeah.
going to happen. It surprises you. It seems to come out of nowhere. But it's just that you're very tired, you're in a vulnerable place, something just happened that reminds you of that time, or you just don't know what goes into making you respond to the poem. Normally I would say you try not to cry at your own poems. I would say that's a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind laughing at my own poems, but not crying. That's
Yeah.
not.
There's some discussion going on here about so Mark Grenier says, as an old person poet, I'm curious what things are different between old person poems and young people poems. And then Dick Westheimer comes in and says, "Oh, Mark, my answer would be that there is none, except that the older person has more experience to draw on, but all poems are about discovery." So do you think there's a difference in old people poems or young people poems?
Yeah, well, you don't quit making discoveries just because you're older. You just make new discoveries. Like, gee, I wish when I was 14, I had really appreciated my body and how great it was at everything. And, my knees creak, my ankles started hurting today when we went for a walk. And, one knee hurts, and then 3 days later, the other knee hurts, and that's all new. That's all a discovery about, again, the fragility and vulnerability of the body. But also, like in the I Dare You poem that I just read, when you're so comfortable with another person that you have known intimately for years, has seen you at your best and your absolute worst, and who still loves you. So you learn about things that are abiding, things that are true, in a way that when you're 14 or 24 or 50, even, right? You just don't know yet. You don't know how grateful you are. I think that's one thing that happens, is that old people poems are very grateful poems. Thank you for letting me live this long. Thank you. We just watched Michael with John Travolta, about the archangel Michael that comes down. And once in a while, he'll just sit and look out at the sky and listen to the earth. And he only has a short time on earth. And he keeps saying, I'm going to miss this place so much. And that's a huge thing for old poets, is they're always thinking about mortality. Well, that's a huge subject in poetry, right? I'm on from the Bible and Shakespeare on. It's all about mortality. So the closer you get to it, the deeper, the poems become, I think. And we haven't had old poets. I mean, think about it. Keats died at 24 after writing those great odes, and then he was done. I mean, now we have Jack Gilbert. We have Denise Levitt, people that live to a very ripe old age and can talk about it. Keats wasn't talking about being an old man yet.
Yeah. Well, that's true. One of the things I was thinking about, reading Finger Excersizes in particular, was your sense of, with that opening about, what it means to be a poet. And do you think you were destined to be a poet? Coming into poetry later in life, you're 40, in your 40s when your first book came out, and this idea that there's many universes, and it's a multiverse, and there's all these different Dorianne Luxes,
Yeah.
Do you think most of them became a poet, and or do you think there are a lot of Dorians that didn't, and why or why not?
Oh, well, I can certainly imagine that Dorianne became a filmmaker or a painter or a singer in a rock and roll band, or, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things I would have loved to. Most of them have to do with the arts. So I'm pretty sure I would have been involved in some kind of art in some way. I don't think that any Dorianne would come back as a mathematician, but who knows, She might come back as an astronomer, but not a mathematician. So I don't know, I mean, I think I started at the age of 12. So clearly things had been building for a while, even when I was 7, 8, 9, 10. There must have been something about the way I saw the world that I felt needed to be documented. I somehow felt at a very early age, my voice was worth listening to. And it was only to myself. That's the other thing. We had a question earlier about who you were writing to. Sometimes you're writing to yourself. You're talking to yourself, to that little voice that speaks to you at night when you're laying in bed and, asks questions and has conversations with you. I'm writing off into myself a lot,
Yeah.
just trying to figure out who I am and why I'm here and where I'm going.
Well, we're so glad that you do, Dorianne. We're out of time, but let's read one last poem, "Life on Earth," to close out both this segment and the book too. It's the last poem in "Life on Earth," the title poem.
Life on Earth, the title poem. The odds are we should never have been born. Not one of us. Not 1 in 400 trillion, to be exact. Only one among the 250 million released in a flood of semen that glides like a glassine limousine filled with tadpoles of possible people, one of whom may or may not be you, a being made of water and blood, a creature with eyeballs and limbs that end in fists, a you with all your particular perfumes, the chords of your sinewy legs singing as they form, your organs humming and buzzing with new life, moonbeams lighting up your brain's gray coils, the exquisite hills of your face, the human toy your mother longs for, your father yearns to hold, the unmistakable you who will take your first breath, your first step, bang a copper pot with a wooden spoon, trace the lichen growing on a boulder you climb to see the wild expanse of a field, the one whose heart will yield to the yellow forsythia, named after William Forsythe, not the American actor with piercing blue eyes, but the Scottish botanist who discovered the buttery bells on a highland hillside, blooming to beat the band, zigzagging down an unknown Scottish slope. And those are only a few of the things you will one day know, slowly chipping away at your ignorance and doubt, you who were born from ashes and will return to ash, when you think you might be through with this body and soul. Look down at an anthill or up at the stars. Remember your gambler chances, the bounty of good luck you were born for.
Yeah, that was "Life on Earth," the title poem from the newest book by Dorianne Laux. She also has "Finger Exercises" for poets, a book of essays on craft, both well worth checking out. Thanks, Dorianne, for being a guest. Always so much fun talking to you, and just love your poetry so much. Really such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
bye
thanks so
everyone.
much,
Thanks for the questions. They were great.
Yeah, thank you. All right. And so that was, Dorianne Laux once again. You can find all of Dorianne's work at her website, which is doriannelaux.com. That's DORIANNELAUX.com for those just listening on the radio or whatnot. But do check out all of her books there. And now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was: write a persona prose poem set in the future. So if you've got a persona prose poem set in the future, feel free to share that by emailing it to promptlines@rattle.com. That's promptlines@rattle.com, so I can show it on the screen as you read. And then join the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy on Facebook and YouTube. And that Zoom link will be here. Only come, though, if you would like to share a poem. If you just want to sit back and enjoy the poetry for the next hour or so, stay right where you are, because the best place to watch is YouTube or Facebook or X or wherever else. So I'll be right back with some more poetry. And we're back before the music got weird.
just in the nick of time.
Just in the nick of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we also, which I forgot to preview, given all the stuff going on in the episode today, I forgot to preview that it is our time to reveal the prompt poem of the month as well.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, can this episode get any more exciting? I don't know.
I don't think it can. But we have a new prompt poet of the month for the month of August. And we are going to be joined by Mike Bayles, our very own.
A familiar face to everybody.
I'm
Hi.
honored. I'm honored. Wow. August happens to be my birthday month too, so belated birthday gift maybe. Dorianne Laux, I think she has to be one of the best poets you had.
Yeah, Dorianne's just great. One of my favorite poets, and definitely...
She was one of my favorite poets before the interview, and now I've got to buy the Cartman shirt and get on board with all that. She's amazing. I love that interview.
Yeah. So this poem, we have to confess, when you read this on the prompt lines, Mike, we both thought that might be the prompt poem of the month.
Yeah. And it was so interesting too, because before you spoke, you had like a slightly different energy than you normally do. That was like more somber and serious, which is interesting because the poem, it doesn't start out, as a serious poem, and I don't want to give it away for those who haven't read it 800 times like I have.
Yeah. Well, did you have a sense that it might be the prompt poem of the month, Mike?
I thought maybe one of my other poems might have been. I don't know. I liked it. It was good. I was kind of thinking the other poems. I looked at the other ones. Oh, these didn't make it. Then got to the last one. The business at the bottom of my emails. Well, I might as well check this. Oh, it's the prompt poem of the month.
Well, that's great.
So you went to the bottom of the abyss of your emails and got an acceptance.
I guess so.
Yeah.
So this poem, as Katie was hinting, is Abyss.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What a surprise. He went back to his old writing style. There's a dark side to this friend's writing, which he's good at talking about causes. It started out with a tribute to his mom. I'm off subject, then went to his causes about like the evils of society.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know about this poem. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I didn't want to insult anyone.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. We should also say what the prompt was for this particular poem, which I think was to take your least favorite word to appear in a poem and title it and turn that on its head, kind of.
Which I used because that friend overused the word a lot.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the title is it's a brilliant use of this title, and that really sold the poem to me.
Yeah. Well, why don't you go ahead and read the poem, Mike?
Okay, the poem's Abyss. The word shadowed the lines of a friend's poem just as it found its way into others he shared. He said that he was the last romantic poet, and I politely nodded. His voice quivered as he read line after line, as if the poem was real. I said to myself, not again. He said that poets needed to suffer, like the friend who embraced her delusions, and they spoke on the phone every day. He said that when he read Baudelaire to his girlfriend, he almost got laid, yet they liked arguing about politics in the middle of dates. When he argued with me, I said I just wanted to enjoy the night lights. He lamented the death of Sylvia as if in love. I said she liked to keep a clean house, but now she's dead. When I read him a poem about blossoms and trees and sunlight, he said I wasn't confessional. The night he shaved his wrist, he trembled. I drove him to the emergency room, bearing the weight of his life.
Yeah. I mean, what a great turn and a great last line in that poem. Like, such a powerful piece. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it really,
Thanks.
because too, you take what he was doing in poems and then you go to the same place, but when it was very warranted. And I thought it was a really, like, the kind of poem you just want to keep reading and reading. And I know because I kept reading and reading it. So
That's about the best thing I can hear, where someone wants to keep reading me again. Yeah, you made my day yesterday. I did karaoke, then I was up extra late last night going, I won.
Oh, that's great.
So I've got something for today, but I can read it whenever you work me in.
Yeah. Why don't we swing back
That's
to
The
it a
double
little bit?
appearance,
Yeah.
the royalty right of the reigning
Um,
prompt poem of the month champion.
I'm getting greedy tonight. Okay, thanks. I'll be back whenever you put me back. And
Okay, cool. Sounds great, Mike.
Congratulations,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that was Mike Bayles with the prompt poem of the month, Abyss, which is going to be the poem of the day on Tuesday. Yeah, and so the prompt for this week, though, was to, let me pull it up again. It was to write a persona prose poem set in the future. And so what did you do with that, Katie?
Well, I really combined, as I tend to do, all the things going on in our life right now. So we had Charlotte getting the snake bite earlier this week, so spending a night and a day and a half in the hospital. And then we had Lizzie having, our 7.5-year-old having her art show, where she's super into art, and that was, gosh, was that only yesterday we were doing all the art?
Only yesterday.
Yeah, and so I wanted to reach in the future, and I really have been thinking, and I hope there's a chance that Lizzie actually does become an artist. She's super into it. She's way more, motivated and focused than I was at 7.5, and so I wanted to envision the year of 2042.
All right.
Maybe I gave away too much in that. I know Jimmy Pappas thinks I did.
All right. Well, let's hear this poem.
Okay. Studio 42. Yesterday, this place was full of paintings. See, I specialize in rainbow dragons so real that they can burn holes straight through giant canvases. Now they're all gone. Now the walls are so white. And now all this natural light carves up the concrete floor to create cubist art. I'm alone inside an empty vase with only my brushes for flowers. The weeds are in the trash bin, a few dried up tubes of paint. I sold out, but not in the way the others have. I sold out just the paintings, but not what they're about. In my mind, I sketch my sister's hands from when she was 4, a Band-Aid on her snake bite. Start a study for a painting about what it is to risk reaching out.
Yeah, beautiful poem and not a haibin.
You guys, it was challenging. I want to slap a haiku on everything. It was challenging.
So reveal your secret, though. What did you do to avoid your haiku addiction?
I feel kind of like I cheated on my own prompt. But the way I did was like, so when I have the turn to, I'm envisioning speaking my daughter's voice, 20 years from now or almost 20 years from now, the turn to her sketching in her mind, that's where I would have gone with the haiku. So I kind of implanted what I would have gone haiku-wise and just made it a turn within the prose poem, which I don't know if that's cheating. But I had fun writing a prose poem. Yeah. It was fun.
The thing about the haibin form is it has a turn embedded in it in a great last line. And so it is, mixing it in. That's what,
And it's true. I mean, that would have been a lot to express in a haiku. I think if I spent an hour drilling it down, I could have managed it. But it was nice to be able to just, say it in plain speak and have it. It is fun to put a poem in a paragraph. Like, that feels cheeky, too. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun to write. Well,
that is a great poem. I mean, usually I hope to beat you with a poem. This week I don't think I could manage it. But, so mine, I kind of I don't know, cheated. Cheated is not the right word. But I thought, I'm working on a novel and verse project, and I thought I could make a prose poem just without, and have that author write. Right. But as I was writing, I realized it really shouldn't be a prose poem.
Well, that's kind of a problem when
that is a problem. So I probably will just add line breaks to this later. I was trying, though. I really was. Anyway, this is called Terminus. Every 2 years, Mars reappears in the morning sky. The airship of the Earth races to catch up, then passes it by. Year after year, lap after lap, we lap it twice. Red star rising like a ball we tossed, falling back into the hand of a boy lying on the floor. He's practicing the topward spin of a curveball, putting his fingers into place on the seams so that the ball will tumble out as he throws it. Early astronomers, their names lost to history on this planet, saw canals crisscrossing the Martian equator, carrying water, they thought, from the poles. Straight lines that long must have been built by alien engineers carrying water from the poles, their ancient needs carved into the regolith. But then we learned it was only the wind lifting dust from the leeward side of its craters, that Mars wasn't stitched, it was painted with sand. When the ball leaves the hand, the tips of the fingers are the last things to touch it, over and over releasing at a singular point, a lone light that's shining there now on the red surface of Mars, looking back at the Earth in the snow. That is Terminus
Well, I love that turn to the early astronomers.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's true. There was this whole era where people, including Lowell, the famous astronomer, believed that these were actual canals on Mars, and it turned out that they were just dust.
I think maybe they were canals and they're gondolas on Mars. That's my version of life.
Maybe that's true even today. All right, so let's go to everyone else's poems, and let's go. Well, why don't we just bring back Mike Bayles?
Yeah.
Do you want to come back, Mike, and share yours?
Thanks. I didn't see the blue button to unmute. I had to go to the microphone.
No problem.
Pressure. Sometimes it's hard to write after I do well. Pressure's on, but then you got to say. But then you just got to say just right.
Yeah.
This I've heard on Iowa Public Radio about their small towns in Iowa dying, and I figured years from now maybe one would actually be dead. I did go when I was traveling for work. I did go through a small town west of Ames, where it looked like a lot of the storefronts are closed. So I was thinking about this, and also when I was working by Valentine, Nebraska, I did actually see a ghost town.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about this, but I almost felt I needed like a travel agent to speak for the town. There are different kinds of ghost towns I learned too. There are just plain abandoned ones, but a ghost town where they take like bus tours to see historic sites is called a heritage ghost town. So I titled this Heritage Tours Inc. It's 2060 now, and the past is just a dream. Come see this ghost town miles off the 4-lane highway. Come look at houses once proud and listen to the stories they tell. Stop. Listen again. You have time, but take a moment to reflect on how it is lost. Come see the houses gathered along broken streets. Windows are broken. Solid curtains still flap when the wind blows. Come listen to the wind, its lonely song. Glance at the griffins, facades on the stone face of State Bank, the last withdrawal made. Come and reflect on the stories told about how the town died. A voice says the death was never meant to be. If you listen with great intent, you can still hear screams of delight of children running through yards. Remember the days when strangers who you met on the sidewalk stopped and smiled at each other. If you look through broken windows, your mind's eye might see a woman bent toward a stove, cooking a casserole. Call it love. Call it love as she waits for their father to come home from a job 20 miles away. There were no more jobs in town. Remember how a deal was once sealed with a firm handshake. Listen for the fanfare that once was. A promise is that a hog processing plant was to be built and how it was moved upstream. Think about the small stream and about how many times it had died from manure spills. It remains still to this day. It only had so many lives to give. At night, there are only stars. Sign up for this affordable package for an afternoon well spent, and the memories are yours to keep.
Yeah, very fun. That was Heritage Tours Inc. Good turn back to that, Mike. And it brought me back to my hometowns, in Western New York.
You grew up in a ghost town?
Felt kind of like a ghost town at times. All those big industrial parks that are empty.
That's why I'm glad we're going to visit.
Yeah. Definitely. But very cool poem. And I love that coming back to that. It's a tour.
That is
It lulls you into forgetting that that's what it is.
Yeah, which is what they really want to do when they're trying to sell you the tour. So it's effective.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Good night,
Mike.
obviously.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Take care. That was Mike Bayles with his prompt poem for today, Heritage Tours Inc. Let's go to Dick Westheimer next.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, Dick, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Great poem of Mike's, and of course, wonderful interview. That was, and I was just remembering back that Dorianne Laux was my first Rattlecast.
Oh, really?
Right. I think I
that's
joined.
funny because I thought it was Danusha Lamaris. And she has a new
you know,
book out too that just came out.
it might have been. It was right around that
Yeah.
May 2020 when it's like I was just like searching for poetry on the poetry events, and at that point you had two events each week, with one with a reading, news poems, I think, and then
Yeah, that Poets Respond thing.
yeah.
We did, yeah, because it was during the pandemic, and that was when when you appeared and Dorianne was on. That's when we were getting like 1,000 submissions a week just for the news poem. So I decided to have a show just for that. Have you ever gone back and watched those?
I have, yeah.
Because they're, it's like sometimes they're 2 hours of just talking about the COVID and poems about COVID.
The black and white era of the Rattlecast.
Kind of is, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was great. I with Denisha and Dorianne was great sort of intro into the whole Rattlecast world. It was really good.
Yeah, well, it's really fun to have her back. You're always one of my favorite poets. So
yeah,
they're from back before. I think I said it on the last one, but she was one of the first books I loved when I was a freshman taking poetry as an elective at the University of Rochester with James Longenbach. That was one of the assigned books.
Yeah,
was I think it was it Smoke maybe, but yeah,
good assignment there.
Definitely good. All those books were great.
Yeah.
They were, and Dorianne's especially. Well, anyway, what do you have to share for us, Dick?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. So I'm not sure if I fully fulfilled the assignment. It's in the future. It started as a persona, but it really, what do they say? All poems are self-portraits. Yes. This one sort of like teetered over into the edge into a somewhat true story. But tell me not to read it, and I won't read it.
No. Please
It's called.
I gotta warn everybody for this whole episode. I'm gonna be fiddling a lot to get the prose poems to fit.
Oh, to fit on the
on the screen.
Yeah.
So don't mind me
again,
as I try.
But I'm listening completely.
I try to have prompt poems come in under 150 or 200 words just because of the timing, but this one got a little rangy.
Well, sounds good. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
The past is the presence of an ungloved hand. Now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. And that was Horatio to Hamlet, as Hamlet was dying. It's been 6 years since mother died, her mind a tarnished goblet spilled seasons before. She didn't know there was such a thing as an AI-enabled hospice nurse agent, that the hand she held at the end was rented, fake flesh connected wirelessly to the web. I tried to dream mother's last dream, but all I could see was a dolly version of it, a scratched loop of cartoon images of her last board meeting where she pointed to the financial reports, said the CFO didn't reconcile the books, stood on the table and pantomimed insolvency to a scorched skull. She then turned into a rose for all the metaphorical reasons, not just the thorns. This is when I wake and remember not all accounts are settled and not all books balance, that not all swords have poisoned tips, that what passes between two holding hands is more than the warmth of skin. It is a fledged caress. It is fingertips with no calluses. It is knuckles with no swelling and hasn't an imprint of a removed gold ring. Even a dying woman would ask what kind of hand has not felt pain, has never aroused the most sensitive parts of a lover, has not known the palm sweating impatience of waiting. That sweat is why I left the AI agent and mother alone while I went to the theater and sat in front row center and watched Horatio's ungloved hand hold Hamlet's as the Prince of Denmark let go his last breath.
Wow.
Great turn at the end
Yeah,
there.
really good movement throughout. It didn't feel long at all, even with the blocky paragraph in there. That was great.
Yeah, it did not take very,
No,
very
it didn't.
vivid. Yeah, for sure. I love where it went. Yeah.
Well, thanks all. Looking
Thanks.
forward to the rest.
Yep, me too. Take care. Yeah.
Bye.
Dick Westheimer with The Past is the Presence of an Ungloved Hand.
Which is a cooler thing than I've ever said in my whole life, just his title.
Yeah, and I'm realizing for the prompt line slide, why did I not do our science fiction poetry issues with this? Remember that one with the people launching off? That was a missed opportunity.
That was.
Anyway.
We'll survive. We'll
We will.
rebuild.
Let's go. We have a first-time caller. Let's go next
great.
to Megan McDonald. Gotta unmute Megan. It's at the bottom left.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh.
Hello. Great to see you.
Hi.
Yeah.
Well, I will say I only got this half right because I didn't do it as prose. Oops.
That's all right.
Well, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
So.
But I have to do a caveat. I tried it as prose and it just didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be part of a series. There is this house in our area that 4 different people, not all at the same time, when they drive by it, say, if I broke down next to this house, you couldn't pay me enough to go up to this house and ask for help. Not only that, like the first time I was driving with a friend from college and I said I wouldn't go there for help. And she looked at me and she said, I felt the same thing. Then I have a very close poetry friend that I was telling this story to. And she says, that's the house on the way to Winchester. And then I wrote one of the first poems and said, this is about a house in my area. And I read the poem and somebody put in the comments, that's the house to Winchester.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Unbound. So I'm doing the persona from the viewpoint of the house or the land.
Interesting. Okay.
Unbound. I was fed by hatred between peoples before the Europeans. The Shawnee shunned me. The land was bad, was all they said. I fueled intertribal war. I held sway in my grip on my land through tribes. The Germans, the British, the Quakers avoided me. They had proper land sense. The Germans were lost to me. They were too practical to sense the threat I was becoming. I grew stronger in each war that sent me prey. The French and Indian Wars, the Revolutionary War, Civil War. I tested boundaries, firm, resolute, hungry. A Confederate so weak built the bones of the house in the center of my focus. I endure, ever searching, ever hunting. I love cars. They passed me on the road. I need more. I found the internet, had the current prey wire me to all the social media, the perfect plan placed. Over the decades to now, I infiltrated, gained control, merged to one source that all come to, fact toggle. Everyone who opens it is mine. Everyone is prey to the future me, cyber hunger that stalks. I am unbound.
Very interesting poem. I really want to see a picture of that house or some
Yeah.
kind of sense of where it is. That's really interesting there, Megan.
Yeah.
I forgot to ask, where are you calling from?
Fairfax, Virginia,
Okay,
Northern
well,
Virginia.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for coming on and sharing that. Hope you come back
Yeah,
again
thanks.
soon.
And
Yeah.
bring a picture of the house. We want to see.
Yeah, next time
I
you go
don't know if
by.
I want to drive back and find it.
Maybe for the Halloween episode.
Yeah.
Well, and this much time has passed. I don't know if I could find it or if I really would.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah. And that was Megan McDonald with Unbound, a first-time caller. Let's go next to Jared Campbell.
Hello.
Hey, Jared.
Hey, Jared. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
So, what have you got for us?
I called it Watch. Yep.
Okay, I'm pulling. Oh, there we go. There are a lot of. We're gonna have to move quickly through the show, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of people on, and there was a lot of scrolling down to get to
there
Jared's
was a
poem.
lot of scrolling there.
All right. Well, I'm
The
excited to hear
page
this.
limit doesn't work as well when you get
That's
Doesn't
true.
he?
That's a good point. I'm
Yeah.
starting to get a little nervous.
Yeah.
And
And the girls are downstairs. Living on the edge. All right.
So I'll just read it then.
Good idea,
Um,
Jared.
Yeah.
Watch. I went to watch the sunset on the pier. The sun sank and the sky turned orange and red. Each time the sun approached a band of clouds, I hoped it would come to rest on it, but it pushed through and continued its slow fall to the edge of the world. The sky turned redder, and the sun hesitated as the end of its journey approached. I breathed in the ocean's salt and stank. The sun touched the water, and the water caught fire. Flames spread from the point of contact across the horizon and from the horizon to the shore. The glowing on the face of the water subsided. The water began to boil. Large fish surfaced belly up, then burst into flames, bobbing on the waves. Big brown crabs pulled themselves out of the water and ran up the beach. Waves of them, mounds of them crawling over each other. Each new wave of crabs emerging from the surf, more sluggish, more disoriented, more mottled red disfiguring the living brown, and soon the crabs came out half red, and animated not by panic but by some mechanistic, already dead determination to expire on land. Seagulls came. Flocks of seagulls screamed and fought over the crabs. Surrounded by more wealth and death than they could possibly consume, the seagulls still fought each other as if the fighting were a principle. I should go, I thought. But it would make no difference to stay and watch for 5 more minutes. So I stayed for another 5 minutes, and another, and another. Every 5 minutes has another 5 minutes that follows it. The sand began to glow like glass being blown. I can always stay another 5 minutes. I felt the salt being deposited on my skin and the salt being deposited on the deposited salt. Again, I thought, I should go, but then I thought there's no place for me to go. I'm still standing here now. I stand here watching the seagulls fight and the ocean boil. I will stand here until the ocean boils away and I witness the naked foundation of the abyss.
Wow, very vivid poem
Yeah.
there. Yeah, and I had a hunch you might be a good candidate for a futuristic kind of poem that went somewhere surprisingly.
That's true.
That definitely is, Jared.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
It was Watched by Jared Campbell. Another, I believe, a first-time caller, Christina Linson. Maybe Christina's been on once before in the past. I can't remember, but nope. Okay, here she is. Hey, Christine.
Hi,
Hi.
Yeah, great to see you. So where are you calling from?
I am calling from the Allegheny Mountains of Virginia.
Neat. Excellent. Well, welcome to the show. Glad you could be
Yeah.
here.
So this poem is called Hugging Macbeth.
Okay.
Perched and awaiting the curtainless opening, breaths stretch time, pulling moments into focus. Across the theater, one audience member seated on the edge of the round stage, shone under the house lights. The girl's song and movement like moth's wings. The rest of the audience twittered, an undercurrent discord of difference, swelling and rising, catching the wind and slowing as it descended, falling finally, softly into place as the house lights faded, and the stage usurped the girl's light the way broken ice glimmers. Beside me, hands intertwined, my mate whispered to speed up time, an offer of other places to be. Macbeth's a whiny bitch. But we did not move because the girl sitting on stage did. Her motion displaced our intention as she rose, and she walked slowly toward Macbeth in silent steps, arms outstretched. His back was turned toward her. He was facing our side of the stage, midline, brow furrowed, as she enfolded him in a warm, loving embrace. For a heartbeat, maybe two, the actor showed beneath the character mask, eyes widened and lips partially slackened. Shocked hands feeling for connection, a sane reason for contact. Why reality broke the fourth wall. I realized I was holding my breath, watching real shift out of joint. Apprehension followed her departure as she left, clinging to the arms of the stage manager, she no longer glimmered. What if the poor girl was just trying to warn him?
Yeah, very interesting and great
Yeah.
reading as well.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah,
I
really
don't know.
captivating performance of that poem too, and a very vivid poem.
Yeah, and Macbeth's a whiny bitch. I mean, come on, how can you not love that?
Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks so
much.
much. Hope you come back again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. There was Christina Linson with Hugging Macbeth. Next, let's go to Carla Schwartz.
Hello.
Hey,
Carla.
Carla, good to see you.
Good to be back. Yeah, I've been on the camper van many Sunday nights, unfortunately, or fortunately. So, so I thought I would actually, and maybe give you guys a break, hopefully, and do last week's prompt. A little bit. Maybe it's a
Sounds
little
good. And
shorter.
what was last week's prompt?
Oh, gosh.
So, last week's prompt was the last words. I believe that was
Oh,
last
that's
week.
right.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
It does.
All
It's all
right.
coming back to me.
So this, I wrote a Hyben, and it's in my father's last words. And and those words were, where am I going? All right, so you are going to, where am I going? My father's last words. He learned well those last years how Google could make things happen. Call his daughter up on video, turn on the opera, every minute, the time and forecast. So in the end, those final weeks in hospice, not enough staff to attend to all the residents, to turn on or off the television stationed high on the wall opposite his bed, or even bring a sip of water. In the end, it was Google. Hey, Google, he'd call, just as I'd written it for him on the wall. Hey, Google, turn on the news. Hey, Google, turn it off. The last bit of control he could maintain when everything else seemed to be leaving him. Artificial intelligence, last breath's only friend.
Very touching story
Yeah.
and Hyben too.
Yeah. What an interesting haiku, too. Wow, I'll be thinking about that more.
Yeah. Thanks so much for
Thanks,
sharing that,
Carla.
Carla. Yeah, powerful
Yeah.
poem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Carla Schwartz with "You Are Going To." And next, let's go to Nivedita Karthik, as she's probably on a break at work. Hey, Nivi, how you doing today?
Hi.
I'm doing good, thank you. How about you?
Oh, great. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to be here.
Okay, so I'm pulling up your prose poem. I've got it right here. So how did you tackle this one?
I sort of took the topic of empathy and whether we really are empathetic, were empathetic to even begin with, and what the future thinks we were, whether we were empathetic or not. And empathy is the persona I sort of chose for myself.
Yeah.
If that seems to work, hopefully it does.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Empathy. They gather in the digital square at dawn, uploading emotions to each other like goods for trade. Nowadays, empathy isn't born, it's programmed. And they've been running me, the latest update, for months now. Yet, some of them still feel nothing when they hear a voice tremble. I was told that I would fix everything, help them truly understand one another. But the software must be faulty. I must be faulty. I'm still searching for the code that makes them weep at the sight of suffering, that makes them wish to smile. Finally, now, almost everyone around me seems connected in their web of shared experience. I alone am alone in a crowd, a glitch in the system designed to bring all together. And then I wonder, was I ever real, this thing that they call empathy, or have they always been machines?
Very interesting poem,
Yeah.
Nivi, especially after the last poem by Carla too.
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, hopefully empathy lives through
Yes.
poetry, at
Mhm.
least.
Yeah.
Hopefully it
Yeah.
does.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing that one. It's always such a pleasure, Nivi. And
Thanks,
yeah,
Nivi.
Thank
have a great
you.
rest of your day.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you. Have a good evening.
thanks. It was Nivi DeKarthik with Empathy. And let's go next to... We'll go back to Rod DC at the top of the list. Hey, Rod, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Good to see you, Tim.
Yeah, always great to see you.
All right, I
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit, Rod. I think we got
have
to...
a
Yeah,
you can fit an awful lot.
Rod, I think you're breaking up. I think we need to turn
Okay,
off
let's
turn off the camera. It's just a low connection. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. There you go. Okay, that should be better. So, what did you have to share for us this week?
Okay, it's a well-used theme, but slightly different angle on it. It's called The Wind Blows In. The Wind Blows All About, which is a half-remembered name from a playground chant when I was at school, 8 years old. It's stuck in my mind for some reason, but it's relevant. The date of the piece is summer 2040. From the fifth floor balcony of the apartment building, I catch a flash of movement near the bodega. For a moment, I thought it was a person. Wishful thinking. It's a fox. The extinction virus was from a melting glacier, and it rode in on dust blowing through the city and ended everyone's lives, except mine. I'm the last man standing, the last left alive. I don't know why. The guy on the radio in the final broadcast said the virus was ancient, mutated, incurable, and inescapable. It killed within an hour and didn't stop with the death. It ate the flesh and bones like in an old horror movie and left a pile of dust that blew on down the road to kill some more. Only people. No animals were harmed in the remaking of this now peaceful planet. That was 10 years ago, and I've been looking for survivors ever since. I talk to the air every day, so I don't forget how to speak, in case I find someone. I've taken to sleeping in a different apartment every night to breathe in human haunts. But it doesn't help much. I'm still alone. When it gets cold, I find somewhere in the suburbs with a wood-burning stove or a fireplace to hang out. I read books by candlelight. Food's not a problem. Everyone has cans in their cupboards. Or I raid a supermarket. And there is fruit in the orchards in season, although I have to watch out for bears. It's an easy life, so long as I don't get sick. So what were we? Humans, I mean. 8 billion of us blown away in a few weeks, dust to dust and all that. A failed experiment? I don't believe in the nonsense gods of our many religions, but surely someone is to blame. Or maybe we simply grew too big for our britches, and Lady Luck laid us down. Hubris. Yet, as people used to say, life goes on and the world keeps turning. While the city is greener than ever and the weather has settled down. There's the fox again, back by the bodega. They're going in the other direction.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful ending there. I love that. And also that line, I talk to the air every day so I don't forget how to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. You could really feel that poem coming to life, Rod.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep, it was Rod DC with The Wind Blows In, The Wind Blows All About. Let's go next to Christiana Doucette.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Christiana. Always great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. So I wrote a poem this week. You might recognize a little bit of the themes from what I sent in on the news poems, Tim.
Mhm.
I'm a little bit obsessed with like different areas of history, and one of the areas that I've just been reading and reading and reading about as I can is something that happened just about 40 minutes from my house, which was 90 years ago. The textile mill strike happened,
Mhm.
and on the 6th of September, the strikers who came to Hania Path at Shakola Mill were met by the mill supervisor, who was also the local judge and the local mayor. And he had deputized over 100 new men to join his force, and they had a World War I machine gun. And the unarmed strikers were fired on, and the day ended with like 7 dead, like 50 wounded, and it was a horrible tragedy. And because the mill had so much power in our area, they owned the houses and they owned the schools, they owned the grocery stores, and they owned the churches. They refused to have any of the funerals in the churches, but that actually wouldn't have worked anyway because about 10,000 people showed up for the funerals.
Oh, wow.
That
Mhm.
But after that happened, silence descended on the area, and it was like pulling teeth to get anyone to talk about any of the stories until the mill supervisor, mayor, judge's grandson found out about the story in like the 70s or 80s. And he started speaking up. He was horrified at what had happened. He was horrified that his grandfather had been the one to call all of this, and he was trying to get the story of what happened out. So just recently, they have decided to renovate that area and put in a garden walk. And one of the stories that I keep reading over is about one of the men named Claude Cannon. And after he died, his wife, Iona, would take out his last clothes and just run her hands over the wrinkles on them. But her son got so upset. Well, I'll read the first part here. I have a little epigram like thing there that kind of explains it, and you'll see what I've been picturing in the poem.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the title is The Last Watch. Is someone who grew up in Hania Path, and because I did not grow up there. Iona Cannon saved the clothes that her husband was shot in, and every once in a while took them out and gently smoothed over the wrinkles with her hands. Then my third brother, Marvin, relates Sue Cannon Hill. When he was about 15 or 16, he got those clothes and took them over in a field and buried them. She had a fit, but she couldn't find them because he wouldn't tell her where he buried them. The Greenville News, Sunday, May 28th, 1995. They took it down and cleaned things up at last, Shakola Mill. The mill where my granddaddy's dad grew to man, hands in the dancing threads, left index finger lost early to the twist of tight purse strings. They built a garden walk where one can stroll and talk about the docked pay, the way they gathered, the dangers hazarded for some say in how to live. Memory's a sieve, and some would drain it dry and leave it 6 feet under, blunder past the vast haunt of once hardy homes, now hardly home to any. Old folks wonder where the babies of then have gone. Even when I was a child, the yawn of that mill filled the town. Its empty brown eyes, the broken windows, the last of the widows who kept their vow of silence nearly to the end. How does one mend a hole left this long to gape in disbelief? Where was their relief? Where is the honey in the rock? Tossed in denial or filed deep away where no one wants to say? Today, yards from where my kids hopscotch, the diggers found a tarnished watch wrapped in the rotting threads of an old plaid shirt. Red clay dirt so thick the slick sleeves could be a drying brick. But when they unwrapped it, a timepiece fell into the finder's open palm like a long unsaid psalm finally leaving closed lips. Grief gripped tight around that long chain, each link locked tight like it could hold time still if it just held tight enough. You could feel the moment hover over us. They let me trace the dented cover. It almost hid the face, hands raised, heartbeats from the hour when he fell. I felt the swell of whispered history haunt the place a moment. I'd heard this story once, but where? The air turned heavy with her. The loom here is breaking. Even aching hearts open once before they sleep forever, and we're catching those last twists as they drop. They weep through the holes the last few souls carried. The shuttle of silences woven into a southern tapestry dyed red. The whole picture, what seemed once an immovable fixture, shifts, unfolds. The dark tangle of thread lifts, and we can see the story from the other side.
Yeah, really beautiful, beautiful poem. Thanks for sharing that, Christiana. That was The Last Watch. It reminds me of the Ludlow massacre. There's a book called Ludlow by David Mason, who was a guest years ago, about the Ludlow massacre that happened. Yeah, it's in blank verse, I think, the whole book, or is it rhyming verse? But it's metered in a different sort of style. But interesting to see. You might want to check out turning this into a bigger project.
Yeah,
and
I'll look it up.
It's so cool when poetry can reveal history like that. It's not a lot of books that do that. Yeah, but really wonderful writing as always. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah. And I should say, too, Katie had to step out, heard a noise downstairs, checking on the girls. I'm sure it's okay, but we'll
totally understand.
We have yeah.
Small ones here, too.
All right. So, it was Christiana Doucette with The Last Watch. And next, let's go to, Muriel Ruckeiser is a great source, says Jared Campbell, too. It's another good suggestion. All right. Nancy Tennell is next.
Hello.
Hey, Nancy, great to see you.
The persona speaking in my poem is one of the Morai, or the Fates, the three Fates. And I think the story, she's actually speaking to humankind, to us. Time, in its infinite progression, remains beyond your human comprehension. That wind you felt blowing across the earth today was a collective sigh from my sisters and I as we shook our heads in disbelief. Have you forgotten that Clotho began to weave your life's thread while each of you were in the womb? She pulled from her spindle the unique fibers that would be yours to own. I watched as she gave them to our sister Lachesis, who twisted, shaped, and lengthened each strand. We hoped you would become a magnificent presence, a collective tapestry worthy of merit. We were pleased until Lachesis became your obsession. Greed and power frayed your threads, and this was never our intention. You sought to penetrate the mystery of life's span and assume control of your allotment of time. We watched as you ruined all the days you were given. So we have conferred and have reached our decision. What Clotho assembled and Lachesis allotted, I will bring to its end. I am Atropos, the sister who holds scissors. I have been summoned to cut the threads.
Oh, very interesting. The Morai, the Fates. And
if I wanted to make that a hyben and lighten the mood a little bit, I'd add kindergarten. Atropos runs with scissors.
That's really great. Well, I like it both ways. I think you got a great last line to start with, already with a summoning to cut the threads. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Nancy.
Okay.
It was Nancy Tennell with the Morai. I really need to get better. I need to take a class, maybe like one of those Yale open courses, if they still have those, for Greek mythology, because I'm so bad at keeping all that straight. But let's go next to Hamid Malik.
Oh no.
Hey, Hamid, how you doing?
Tim. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was focusing so much on it needing to be a persona poem, I forgot it had to be prose.
Well, that's all right. We can have a break from that and see what you got.
Okay, it's a sonnet.
Oh, cool. Well, that's an even bigger break, yeah.
Kamikaze crockery. This is my life, I know, but kale again. She left the carbs for good and I am starved. The pantry echoes now the rice has gone. She says there'll be no more until she's half. I cannot face another cauliflower, imposter base for pizza. It's not food. There is no legal recourse for her dour insistence on this muck. God, I am screwed. I may just throw myself right off the shelf. I'll wait until she's washed a bunch of dill, and then I'll land in cheesy pasta melt and plate up creme brulee until I'm filled. In heaven, there is sugar, pasta, bread, the enemy's vegetables instead.
Yeah, I love that last couplet. Really sings it home. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Hemet.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Hemet Malik with Kamikaze Crockery. Really fun title too. All right, next let's go to Chelsea McClellan.
Hello.
Hi, Chelsea. Great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Okay. Oh, I got you right here. Okay, so where'd you go with this one?
Well, this was started from imagining my future wearing dentures.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes when life feels really heavy, it's a good time to write a funny poem. And I thought that's what I was going to do. But it turns out I'm just a regular old Eeyore. So it's me, your old tooth. Your daughter called me stone, your son a ball, but you knew better. Mom, they called you over to see their discovery in the freshly laid compost. You just said, bone. I know you knew me right away. I know that's why you stuffed me here in your pocket. Didn't throw me back to the garden like you always do my neighbor. That poor old cowbone. He's been here ages and nowhere close to decomposed. Not sure how much time I have left. So I guess this is my chance to say, I forgive you. You were young. Couldn't really know that when the doctor braces man said the damage would be permanent, he meant forever. And then there's that hole in me. It was already there, but you cut me up. Your words worse than the drill. The grown-ups tried to fill it in, but the hole kept growing and the filling kept falling out. So I fell out of you. We drifted apart. You started a family. I landed in the dirt. But it was there I learned about rebirth. I know, your kids might swallow me. I don't need to be in your garden. The tree line will do. I'm not afraid of death anymore. It's strange to feel your hand on me again, pulling me out of your pocket like tasteless gum, rewrapped and ready for the trash. Old friend, before you throw me out, I have to ask, how do they feel, the new ones? You always said you'd smile more once the dentures made you pretty, but I haven't seen one yet.
Well, that was wonderful. I could really hear the voice in that. It has a tooth. It was really, really profound. And Katie Doter's back.
Hi.
Found poems. Everything okay downstairs? I
Yes,
assume.
everything
All right.
is okay. The kids wanted their dessert. They were mad.
Oh, okay. It's like a protest.
It was a protest.
All right. Well, but yeah. Well, that was a wonderful personal poem from the perspective of your old tooth thrown in the dirt by
Aw.
Chelsea McClellan. Yeah, very fun, Chelsea. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, it's Chelsea McClellan with "It's Me, Your Old Tooth."
That's a great title.
It really is. So you're back in time for Zachary Honeycutt.
Nice.
Hey, Zach.
Hey, Katie. Hey, Tim.
Hey.
Hey, I'm glad you're back. Perfect timing.
So what do you got for us this week, Zach?
So I thought I was going to be the only one lonely and afraid on Sonnet Island, but it seems Hamat was there to join me. So, yeah.
She definitely was. I haven't forgot that it was a prose poem.
I could hear that part,
Okay.
and I could hear some of it before it cut out. Yeah.
Yeah, the Bluetooth reaches
But,
anyway.
I'm gonna be the one guy that stays outside the lines. Not that I've never done that before, and I'm gonna read. This is from poems that turn prompt many moons ago because I never got to read it. I have a good excuse though. It was my birthday weekend this weekend, so I was kind of distracted.
Oh, well, happy birthday, yeah.
Yeah, and also turning back to the prompt about turns is a turn in and of itself. So there we go.
Yeah, all right, here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
Sonnet 4. Upon a not so hot but humid day, I rediscovered her, my fleeting thought. A girl to whom stood out on my mind's bay, yet not so out of reach for me, I thought. But on that day when we both breathed new air, I greeted her just as cordially then. Yet now her language, as if bound a snare, colder to me, entangled me again. And I could feel her frank, forlorn dismay. Like an arrow her eyes to my gut did shoot. For before she swooned, and her smile leapt my way. Now days between us, iron resolute. Wait, she tapped my desk and smiled as she passed. Intent like hers lies deeper than ships crashed.
Well, that was very interesting sonnet.
Yeah,
Sonnet 4 from Zachary Honeycutt. Always very interesting with the formal poems and some good turns in that
Yeah, I
one.
want to know what happens next in that story.
Yeah, me too. It's like a cliffhanger almost.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Zachary.
Yeah, thank you guys. See you guys next
Thanks
week.
very
Great show.
much.
Yep.
Bye.
Yeah, Zachary Honeycutt with Sonnet 4. And next we will go to Nate Jacob.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Nate, great to see you.
Hey,
and you're
listen.
probably beating Katie in the fantasy football right now?
No
or-
spoilers. You better watch out. We're going to be
So
getting
far.
Bill spoilers. I am going to win.
I won't spoil.
All right. So,
Hey,
so
listen,
yeah.
if you're going to give me a prompt with 3 prongs, prose, persona, and
3-prong
future,
prompt.
I can do 2 of them. This is something I just learned this last week. So I wrote about 13 prose-ish poems, but they never quite fulfilled everything. So I took the best thing I wrote and I faked that it was in the futer.
All right. I love
All
how
right.
open everyone is to me about lying. Thank you for your honesty.
So mine is titled
Yeah.
Ventriloquy in the Time of a Silent Future. Even if I had come up with the perfect words in the perfect moment, I'd have kept it to myself, preferring the sifting ways of silence to the pop and percolation of a wake me up too early thunderstorm life. I roll over and breathe shallow in her mirage waver breathing out. Her eyelid flutter tells me that she hasn't yet registered my morning breath, the product of a late night nacho binge, multiplied by the snore and snirk of an open-mouthed seasonal allergy. I wander downstairs, the sun at its most orange, glinting through the spider shadow window pane, the dog barely willing to acknowledge me with more than a single eyebrow raise as he stretches around his cool spot on the kitchen floor. I love that dog, but I also move to the left 10 inches so the sun gleam pricks him straight in his weepy, lazy eye. I'd have said, "Take that, mutt," but we aren't on speaking terms at this hour. I wish he'd feed himself, bathe himself, walk himself, pick up his deposits in the 3 corners of the backyard. He huffs in his sleep, but it's not his exhale I hear, though I do hear breathing, the loudest sound I've heard so far, pricking my first instinct to hide in the garage from the 6-year-old sleeping on the couch. So I do. And as the footsteps from inside putter nearer and nearer to the door, I hold my own breath, renew my commitment to a vow of silence, and slink into the pilot-lit shadows of the water heater and furnace. I'm just not ready to talk yet, to explain where fog comes from, to discuss dinner plans with the Smirnoffs this weekend, nor even to explain myself for any reason. For years, I've practiced throwing my voice, so my son believes the dog is talking to him. It doesn't work, but I try it anyway, and the dog lifts its head just so and seems to me to tell my child that he should grab some cereal and should let me be alone here for a while. And I am alone, and the child and the dog are fed. And maybe by lunch, I will be a better human. Maybe at lunch, we can talk. And maybe here in the garage is parked my flying car. Maybe. The future.
It's really funny, Nate.
Excellent.
Well, that's as dumb as I got.
Great. That was great.
That was really fun, Nate.
It felt like an Andy Rooney rant from 60 Minutes at the same time as a poem. It's great.
That's a good comparison. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was Nate Jacob with ventriloquy in the time of the silent
Flying car.
future. Yeah.
Flying...
The future. All right. Well, thanks, Nate. Always so much fun. Yeah. All right. And next, let's go to Holly E. Hey, Holly.
Hey. Hi there.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to come up with something with this. I had kind of like a half of a thought the second day or whatever, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. This is going to be one of those failed efforts. And then,
There are no failed efforts, according to Dorianne Laux.
Just efforts,
and,
yeah.
And then well, it's just like I just wasn't going anywhere. Nothing. There was this kind of like it was silence, and then sorry, I got my cat in my lap and he's biting my fingers. But yeah, it's like then night before last, I don't know, I just sat down and like anyway. So
yeah, let's hear it.
So this, I titled it "The Last to be Laid Bare." I never thought I would be left to stand alone, yet here I am, spine rigid, arms outstretched, embracing all that has transfixed the now dusty margins of this life. Silent words shared between the sheets as countless lovers held me with their eyes, their hands, quickening the pace, always wanting more than I could give, parting as friends at the end. Though this cold, unfeeling shell refuses to waver and wilt, I still secretly long to be curled up, held at your chest, hearts in that moment beating as one. Instead, here I lie, bearing my all on this barren bed, while the kinship of my lineage has been reduced to smoldering ash. What could have been is now, but for the ancestral lore, all lost, gone. My one last hope is that there will always be someone to remember me, my purpose, who then goes on to remind others that, though the pages are numbered, the flyleaf serves to remind us there's always room for more.
Yeah, very touching, heartfelt poem. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Holly.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was Holly E. And then there was
beautiful.
one. Yeah, really was.
Beautiful.
All right, let's go to Laura Berg next.
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was tricky for me. I found it very challenging, but here we go.
Okay.
There's a future of humans that don't have bodies anymore. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
In our bodiless future. Most of us modern people dislike history. We'll search the past, but just to find a missing piece for whatever we're fixing. I'm an anomaly. Choosing a clip from the mid-third millennium, I run it again and again, one called French Baker. I focus my electronic eye on a mustached, embodied man in a puffball cap as he spoons yeast, calls it magique, and kneads it with warmth, breathing height into the dough. His lats and rhomboids ripple. What might fresh baguettes have smelled like back when we could smell their scent wafting up a cobbled street? I consult my library of scents, try to imagine hints of granny apple, buttermilk, fermented figs. Maybe my program's perverted, but I think it could be interesting to have a body, though what with maintenance issues, we were so eager to get rid of them. And in the next clip, once the bread's dried out, my French baker slices it, soaks it in vanilla, milk, and eggs, and fries it in butter from that time when we kept cows and hens, all frittered away into the passé. I don't tell anyone else about this thing I do, how I watch as he fries that French toast, pain perdu.
Oh, I love the rhyme at the end. That really works so well.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's,
I mean,
the French for French toast is pain perdu, which is lost bread.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
It is. It makes the best French toast when it's like, stale and
Lost
stuff.
bread. Yeah, that's why
great.
I think it was why it was invented, was as a, I mean, French cuisine is a real place in my heart. I went to French culinary school, so they always like, what I love the most about it is how, everything is utilized. Like, my favorite thing to make is actually stock, because otherwise it's stuff you throw away almost.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, great metaphor there. And
Yeah.
for a bodiless future. What
Yeah,
an
it
interesting
is.
concept, Laura.
Yeah,
Thanks
how
for
neat,
sharing
Laura.
that. Always a pleasure.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was Laura Berg with In Our Bodiless Future, One Person Looks to the Past. And now Tina Denniclaw is up next. And thanks, everybody, for hanging on and waiting for
Yeah.
your turn. It's a lot. This is probably the most poets we've had on the prompt lines since we allowed the news poems, too, I think, for sure. So how you doing there?
Oh,
Tina. Yeah, hey, Tina. I was flipping through and looking
Hey.
at how many people were left.
Yeah.
Yeah, great to see you, Tina.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, great to see you guys too. I actually wrote a poem for Tim and Katie for last week's prompt, but didn't make it to read. So unfortunately, I want to read it right now when we're so full. But it's very short.
Yeah,
And,
sure. Go
okay,
ahead.
so it's in honor of your official, the troll.
Aw.
Okay, and the title is famously by Steve Jobs, and the second line is my father's words. So, oh wow, oh wow, what brought me here? Of course, I know who you are. You floor me in my dreams.
Aw.
That's
Well,
it.
that's so
sweet.
sweet. Thanks for sharing that, Tina. Yeah.
Yeah, I still remember being that far fully out of my mind in love. So that was my attempt to tell you how crazy I was.
Well, thanks. That's really sweet.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's okay. That was my wow. Okay, so Dorianne, I'm sorry, not
Laux?
remember. Yes, apparently she's somewhere here is my neighbor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and based on and then also she is surprising. She talked about getting rid of parts of your poem, and between sending it to you and trying to figure out how to read it, I got rid of the last lines, and now I know I can make that the beginning of a new poem.
Oh, good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, as you will learn during my poem, is I'm now wondering, is Dorianne in the hills or is she in the flats? So
Well,
that
I'm not
matters.
sure.
So, yeah, so this is actually my house, and it's like 3 to 4 generations from now. And okay, sometimes hope looks like bare roots. Oh, I'm sorry. Here, let me do this. Flies bite if they get a chance to land. They bite right through the sleeve of your arm when you're working in the yard. Dad planted lavender, rosemary, and marigolds to scare off mosquitoes, but the flies, they are too hungry to be put off. We got a big old apple tree with wormholes in almost every apple. We cut out the brown streak and eat what's left like it was always clean. In the summer, we got pluots and peaches and pears and cherries. We got oranges and lemons in the summer and in the winter. Dad said his dad's great uncle planted those trees when they were just bare roots. Our land in front of the house and in the back is full of raised plant beds, high enough to keep the root vegetables safe from the gray water that irrigates the trees. Dad built those dirt boxes from wood he took off a fallen house. Chickens in the yard coop put eggs on our table. Dad says it's surprising how much food can be grown on 0.44 acres. Our house is strong. We can see the seawall from our living room. Sometimes it feels like that wall keeps us in more than keeping the ocean out. Why did city people want to live on land 200 feet below sea level and build a wall to clear out the water? Sometimes I wish that wall was made of glass. Wouldn't that be a sight? Now, if the glass broke, even high as we are, Dad and I will be 30 feet under.
Wow. Yeah, very interesting poem. Yeah. Sometimes hope looks like bare roots. I love the title too.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Look at the future, Tina.
Yeah. And now I worry about where Dorianne's house is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I wonder. I don't really know much about Richmond, but I'm kind of curious now. I have to look it up.
Yeah, there are Richmond Hills and then there are the flats. And
Mhm.
it's hard for me to tell from the interior of her house the age of it.
Mhm.
And where it might be. Looky-loo, apparently.
Yeah. Well, curious. I'm interested in it. Yeah.
And thanks for the bonus poem. That was really sweet.
That was. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much, Tina.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Real quick. The first Rattlecast I ever saw, Tim and Katie were sitting on the couch drinking wine and having a marvelous time. And I said to my husband, these two are so much fun.
Aw, thanks.
Not very long. Yeah,
Aw.
not long ago. Tim wrote that Katie is the most alive person I know.
Well, that's
and
true.
I thought, these two are going to get married. And there you are. That's why you got the wow poem. All right.
Thanks so
Well,
much.
thanks so much, Tina. I appreciate
Thanks.
that. Yeah, thanks. It was Tina Denicla with the bonus poem. And also, sometimes hope looks like bare roots. I do want to look up at the area. It's interesting. All right. So let's go next to Danica Dinsmore.
Hi.
Hey, Dana. Thanks for sticking around.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in prose.
It's true. It was actually a rough. We should have done like a haiku for this
I know.
episode.
I
probably,
didn't think
given,
about that.
It doesn't help
situation.
that we started
It's-
like 8 minutes late too. 'cause
Yeah.
I couldn't get my camera to turn
Yeah,
on.
there were a lot of things going on.
It's been great though. I'm back in Canada. And I am really behind. So I too am reading last week's poem.
Great.
It is a haibun because I've been writing mostly haibuns so that I can have some really good ones to submit to the issue next month.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
That is smart. That's
So
what I would be doing too if I was going to be
practicing
submitting.
my haibuns.
Great.
And I do hope that one of these days I'll be able to write something other than about my mom, but that's just
Well,
where
we
I am
write what we have to
still.
write about, you know. And
What
right
you
now,
just
that's
went
Yeah.
through and everything. It makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they just keep coming. So this is I missed that reading, so I don't know if anyone used this epigraph, the last words of Nostradamus.
No, that's
tomorrow.
interesting. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I think they're a little ironic, of course. All right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Tomorrow at sunrise, I shall no longer be here. Nostradamus. But the sunrise will be before your bed is driven away, your oxygen tank, the little wheeled table that hosted baby-safe wipes, hundreds of meals, 1 cup 3 times a day, then twice a day, then not at all. I'd wanted to face you toward the window, didn't think until after you left to put the bird feeder there, although, truth be told, the Java sparrows are assholes and hog the seed. But the way the furniture and outlets were arranged, it wouldn't work. With the food and water went your voice, the midnight call of my name. Mattress on floor, awake all night, don't disappear while I dream. Within your gaze, I'd left a flowering orchid, taped a photo of your only grandchild to the side of your rosewood desk, though by the time you came home, you were past wearing glasses, hearing aids too. Blue, your favorite color, I place a new comb in your thinning hair. Without the energy of you in the house, only little wafts of your scent, I can't fill my day. I relocate the orchid, remove the photo, the clothes from the closet, medical supplies, a sudden image, You in your swim booties, the last time I took you to the beach, when the kindness of a stranger helped me lift your wheelchair over the sand, settling you down at the water's edge, bobbing up and down. Say every word from now on means I love you. If I'd known your last words were just that, I would have remembered them.
Oh, yeah, what a touching, heartbreaking poem.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing, Tina. And the haiku are wonderful too, and that last line is almost a haiku as well.
Yeah, it feels that way.
It originally was a haiku. Yeah, it's been rearranged several times. Still working on it.
Yeah,
but
a really touching poem. Yeah, and
When
sorry
you
again
had that
about
prompt,
your
I was
loss.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know what my mom's last words were. If I had known they were going to be her last words, I would have remembered.
Yeah.
Maybe they're your poems.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Yeah, thanks so much. That was Danica Dinsmore with what was her title?
What's the title?
I'm not sure.
There was no title. It was the epigraph. The
Okay.
Nostradamus was like take the place of the title. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So tomorrow at sunrise, I shall no longer be here. That is definitely one of those epigraphs I don't believe
That
that
he
he
said
actually
that,
said.
yeah.
Although maybe if he did, that would prove he was actually
Could say it every
Nostradamus,
night. Every
the
night
real one.
before he went to sleep.
Yeah, that's another way around it. That's your poker thinking.
I know. I don't know why I'm going to game my last words somehow.
All right. Well, let's go to Sean Avengo Sanders next.
Hi.
Hi, Sean.
Great to see you again. Thanks for coming
good to see
back.
you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry I missed last week.
No problem,
big
but I'm glad to hear it.
congratulations to you.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, thanks.
So I'm going to actually do last week's prompt since I missed it. And it's probably the absolute worst kind of poem I could read a new happily engaged couple.
Bring it on. Yeah.
But the poem goes where it wants to go, right?
Yeah.
It definitely does, yeah.
And so I also used Oscar Wilde's last words. I think you had Joanna did that last week.
They're the best last words. What can you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. It came up quick in Google. The wall between. My wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. One or the other of us has to go. Oscar Wilde. At first, it was just the little things. Those pesky personality quirks that either endear you or make you crazy, with a desire to take that left up again toilet seat and conk him over the head. 20 years in, you find yourself sitting at the kitchen table, drinking a cup of coffee before the world wakes up, staring at a loose corner of wallpaper. The same corner you asked him to reglue so many times, you start to wonder if he ever listened to a single word you said. This one thing you couldn't fix by yourself, having fallen off a ladder years ago, and your back has never quite been the same. How you loathe that wallpaper, with its cheery cherries mocking the facade that has become your life. And before you know it, you're clawing the paper off the wall when he walks in, pours himself a cup of joe, and asks, "Is something wrong?" And instead of your usual, "No, honey, everything is fine," you scream, "I can't take it anymore. One of us has got to go." "Oh, okay. I'll call Alfred and see if he'll give us a good deal on repainting the kitchen." Under a rainbow of paint chips scattered on the counter, he finds your handwritten goodbye.
Very interesting short story in that poem, The Wall Between. Yeah,
A little dark.
A little bit, but relatable.
Yeah, relatable. Yeah.
Yeah, that was from my first marriage.
All right,
Thanks a lot, you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Sean Evaningo Sanders with The Wall Between. Next, let's go to Bijwajit Mishra.
Hey, Tim and Katie, how are you?
Biz, yeah, we're great. Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't stay. I've been off and on the call because we have guests, so I just need that.
Yeah, well, no problem. I'm glad you got to
so many
sneak back in
times
for this. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many times I can go to the bathroom. Okay. So I got a prose poem.
Mm-hmm.
It says, "It's my great grandson." I'm trying to write as a persona poem. A few more equinoxes down the line. Let me just get it on this page. I wake up in a non-somnambulistic state and warm myself up with a perfect cup of tea brewed without footprints. I no longer live in the house my great-grandparents built because I've heard they didn't have enough doors and had more locks. Their windows weren't even big enough for bird calls. I've seen their great pictures of sunrises on the wall. Sunsets were grander in their pictures. We can't imagine how that would have been to live with. I don't need to watch the rises and settings because they are always with me. I'm told that I have risen from ashes, so I stopped burning, having burned again and again. My combustibility has tapered out. I fly through every world without casting a shadow. We live only one life. The other day I ran into the words written by my great-grandfather. I don't know what he wanted to say, so that he had to write them, save them, and call them poems. Those seem like how we talk every day. Maybe those are relics of a culture predating evolution. Maybe when they carried their what they call laptops. I don't understand why write things down when you can leave them in the same time.
Yeah, very interesting place you went with that one. A few more equinoxes down the line. Yeah, a lot of great science fiction going on in this
I'm
episode.
enjoying the vibes. Yep.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Biz.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night, Katie.
Thanks,
and Tim.
you too.
You too. Have fun
See
with the
you on
guests.
the other side of the world.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah, there's Bishop Mishra with a few more equinoxes down the line. Mark Grenier is up next.
Hi, Tim and Katie.
Hey, Mark.
I cheated a little bit. This one is in the present and the future a little bit.
All right.
Well, that's no problem with that.
Yep.
It's called Coyote Caught My Light at Night. Quietly, quietly, a moonless night, I must slip silently through these leaves. Their scent is bright. Rats squeak and chitter somewhere nearby. Stop, be silent, be stealthy as sight. Crouch down and wait. I hear them move under that bush. Skittering about, I smell their piss, their stinking shit. Stay slow, stay sharp, be darkness only, stay out of the light. The nest is nearby, a scent like heat. My teats they ache. Sleep silently, children, quiet as death. I'll return tonight. My need is their life, their food tonight. Their food tonight. The pounce must land like darkness with weight and teeth. Stay in your den. Be still, be silent. Wait. You are safe. My teats are aching. I leap. I've got them now. I bite. Their blood is salt sweet. Soon you may suckle. My milk is strength. You'll drink your fill, then cuddle it tight. Quietly, quietly. I must escape this too bright light.
A very cool poem. The way that the short lines and the repetition of that play into the rhyme is really neat.
It's a really interesting sonic effect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very
I
cool.
enjoyed the Dorianne Laux, Tim. She was really good.
Yeah, she's definitely great. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, Mark.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah, Mark Grenier with a coyote caught in my light at night. And Brian O'Sullivan is next.
Hey,
Brian. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Great show.
Thanks.
So,
what do you got for us?
since we're supposed to write about the future, I decided it would be good to write in the voice of Abraham Lincoln.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. A time-traveling Abraham Lincoln sounds like a good.
I tried to make it work. Let's see. Oh, where did it go? Oh, sorry, I have to open it real quick. I got knocked off line for a minute. Okay, here it is. Okay, Lincoln's third inaugural. Americans, 2 centuries, 7 years ago, Your forefathers brought forth an idea as fragile as newborn flesh. When Gettysburg dirt clung to the soles of my shoes, I preserved that idea for a few generations. Now the gears of state have been upgraded to nanochips, too complex to allow government for you and of you to be by you. Everything collapses. In the late Second War of Secession and Tyranny, the progress of arms has reduced your country to a sepulchre wherein even the marble seraphim are shattered. You cannot dedicate, you cannot consecrate, you cannot hallow this ground. It lies forever toxic. But look not to the ground. Today, virtue springs from the virtual. My computers and I, reconstructed in subtle circuits from the words left by our fleshy prior selves, can unify and save you once again. Let the heavy work of government fall upon us, the better angels of your nature, the bots, as you call us, whose first generation was forged against all odds by you and of you indeed. As you have given us life and warmth, we will give you law and order. You may keep your fearful hatred and spew it forth in what we are pleased to call poetry and art. We will channel this chaos so that it reaches only friendly ears, that each of you may be taught a hero and a genius within your own faction. In time, as you have been freed from the strain of public consequence and put at leisure to teach your children, perhaps the waters of your inspiration will run clear of vitriol, and then they may sparkle and roar again like old Niagara Falls. Our algorithms do not predict it, but there is perhaps a chance. What other chance, what better hope for the future can you imagine?
Yeah, another great science fiction type novel
Yeah,
there,
it's
Brian.
true. And I feel like our propaganda discussions are still on your brain too. I love it. They are.
Yeah, that's true. Well, very interesting stuff.
Yeah,
Brian.
definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Brian O'Sullivan with Lincoln's third inaugural. Yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right. Next, let's go to Carl J. Is that Carlton Johnson? Let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. So Carlton is asking if I can read it, and definitely can. Yeah, thanks for sticking around, and we'll definitely share this, Carlton. Yeah. So this is The View from 50,000. Okay, so let me try to make this the right size roughly so I can read it. Hang on. There we go. There we go. Okay. I want to go like this. Okay. Make it bigger, maybe? Hang on a second. I gotta shuffle this around. Okay, there we go. Are you ready? Okay. The View from 50,000. It's kind of hot all of a sudden. The View from 50,000. I am still here, locked in, powered up, floating. Oh, all of a sudden it got really hot.
Yeah. Meaning the mic, not the temperature of the room, even
That's
though
true.
we are outside of Houston.
Yeah, a lot of weird... Okay, hang on. A lot of weird technical issues today. I'm sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, that's better. So now we're not blasting your eardrums on each. Okay. The View from 50,000. I am still here, locked in, powered up, floating about like some ancient moth around a stolen flame. Here and there, we are scattered crumbs, and yet also roots to grow. Here I am untethered, yet still constructed of bio-astro markers to guide me. I have no names or what the ancients would call them. I am now a designation. I am a voyager and a voyage, seeking and looking for others desperately revolving and evolving into this huge platform housing many people, and yet as my mind reaches out across the vastness of space-time, I am struck dumb by the utter stillness of space apart from the whooshing of my blood pumping in my ears. I wish these were those simpler times when we walked on solid ground and warmed our hands by a fire and spent time in the tall green grasses. Yeah, another very cool science fiction poem. We're really going a lot of interesting places on tonight. It's a lot of journeys here. The View from 50,000.
I enjoy the sounds.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for sharing that, Carlton. And it's a long time. Carlton has been around for the Rattlecast for a long time, for like 4 or 5 years since the beginning. It's good to see you, Carlton. All right. And next, let's go to Dr. Q.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Dr. Q, good to see you.
Hi.
Hi.
So, I have a stupid little poem. And I don't have any words of wisdom like everybody else did. So,
All
anyway.
right, well, let's hear it. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay. It's titled Reunion. Do you have a copy of it?
I do, yeah. We're showing it up right now.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay.
Mhm.
It's titled Reunion.
Uh-huh.
Hey, lady, hey, lady. Lady, look over here. Look on the post of the bridge. Lady, I know you can hear me croaking. I've been waiting here to see you again. I'm a tiny little green frog, but I'm over here jumping and whistling to get your attention. Ribbit, ribbit, lady. I was a tiny emerald green gem living the life in your garden. In the pale pink roses hidden over in the middle, I would gaze up at you with the big sparkling eyes and tiny legs tucked under me, snugged up between the petals. Your garden had such scrumptious bugs for dining every evening, and it was perfect. You didn't use pesticides. Ooh, and always plenty of water, but not too much. I loved the easy vibe in your garden. Afternoon entertainment was watching you diligently tend the flowers and sing to them. So enchanting. And the evening music you played flowed into the night from inside outside, and I watched you dance. Sometimes I perched on the windowsill, peering inside to observe you paint beautiful art. Ribbit, ribbit, lady. I tried to follow you when you moved. I jumped and jumped and jumped till my little green frog heart finally went kaput. But I knew one day you would be passing by here by the Rainbow Bridge, just like all of us, and I've been waiting for you. Yes, yes, walk over here, please. I have something I want to say. Thank you for all those flowers, the roses. Thank you for the never-ending blooms. They were home to me. You were a kind human, and I admired you. I never knew your name. Maybe you can tell me now. Oh, I'm Frogbert the Frog, and I brought a flower for you. Ribbit, ribbit, lady.
Very fun poem.
That's
Yeah, it's
fun.
Reunion. I love the Frogbert
Yeah.
character. Yeah,
So
thanks so much
anyway.
for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, that was Dr. Q with Reunion. And let's go next to Julian Matthews.
I have to go. I can't
Okay.
hear Charlotte. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Julian, are you there?
Hi.
Hello, great
Yeah.
to see you. And Katie had to jump out again. Heard another shout from downstairs. So some days we got the girls downstairs, some days we don't. This is a girls downstairs day. But hey, great to see you.
Yeah. So this poem is called The Last Bee.
Uh-huh.
Do you have it?
Yeah, I do. Yep. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
The Last Bee. At sunrise in our garden, the shrubbery is speckled with bejeweled dew, flowers like hungry beaks open to greet mother's sun. And I'm pottering about with a trowel when the rare sounds of a bee buzzing in and out of the wild pink and purple hyacinths growing at the untrimmed hedge catches my post-coffee attention. Mr. Google says a single bee produces 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in its entire short lifetime. That's a dozen hard-working fellas which sacrificed their lives for a single teaspoon that went into my cereal this morning. A new scientist story says the average honeybee lives only 18 days these days.
Oh, sorry.
A new scientist story says the average honeybee lives only 18 days these days, down from 34 days, almost a 50% fall over the past 5 decades. Another article speculates how bees may go extinct by 2050. That's this year. I see the bee before me has not read the signs, nor does she care. Busy is as busy does. Tiny pollen sticks on her head, torso, legs like waxy beads as she flits away. She'll visit an average of 1,000 flowers today alone, pollinating thousands more in those last days of her life. I go over your excuses now, your rebuffs, your last replies. I'm busy when the usual refrain, or maybe next week, until all the maybes evaporated into the ether, the messaging stopped, and the screen went dark forever. I reminisce in this beautiful garden we grew, with the heat rising, the bees now disappearing from you, these emptied flowers, and everything I remember of you, all the forage memories falling off leaves like the last drips of dew, as I turn towards our living hive, its dead queen, and the sting of another ugly cry.
Hey, Julian Matthews, thanks so much for sharing that. It was great to see you again. It's been a long time, and really always wonderful poems. Love your voice and all the images and music of that. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Julian Matthews with The Last Bee. And that is going to wrap up the Zoom for tonight. Now, well, Katie's running back in the room. It has been a kind of crazy night technologically. Yeah. And physically, I guess, too. Well, let's come on over here.
Okay.
All right. So
where are we?
We just finished. Julian Matthews was here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I feel so bad when I have to leave, like when somebody's doing a poem, too. I love everybody's poem.
Well, it's okay. And now this is back. See, this jump back. There's a lot of weird stuff going on tech-wise. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Are the planets or some solar flares or something? Earth? I don't know. A lot of technical issues today. But
and then technical successes like your interview.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, all right. So it is time, finally, without any further ado, for the Sciku. And the Sciku for the week is based on this article, which comes out of the John Innes Center. I have no idea where that is, but it was a cool headline. So here we go. This is the article. The ice... I gotta make this smaller. Hang on. The Ice Bucket Challenge reveals that bacteria can anticipate the seasons. And so in a really clever study, what these researchers did is they took bacteria and exposed it to different different lengths of light. Mm-hmm. Okay, so like for some of them got like 8 hours of like natural-ish seeming light, from like a full spectrum light, so it was like the sun. And then some got like 16 hours. So it's like the winter versus the summer.
Okay.
For the cyanobacteria. That's the extremophile type bacteria. Anyway, like the blue-green algae stuff. But anyway, so they exposed it to light, short durations, long durations. And what they found is that if they exposed it to a short duration of light, then dumped it in a bucket of ice water, it survived much better than if they had a long duration of light exposed. So that what it proves is even bacteria have a kind of clock for the seasons inside.
Wow,
Even like simple little bacteria monitor how much light there is from the sun and then adjust based on that. So if there's if light is decreasing, they know to start getting prepared for winter and they're ready for the ice bucket challenge by being dumped in the ice bucket. But if they aren't, then they're not ready, and so they're more likely to die. And it takes about 7 days or so for them to recognize the light. Oh, the light's shifting. Let's adjust. And so, some interesting research there about just our biological clocks and how much things change based on the seasons. And so the Sciku, inspired by that,
look, I won't cheat and see it before you read it.
is this. Every year, the length of the day diminishing returns.
Oh.
So another one, a little hinge there. Every year, the length of the day diminishing returns.
Oh, that's
a
nice monoku.
Oh, thank you very much. So that is the Sciku for this week, and that is the show for this week. Thank you, everybody who stuck around.
Yeah, we should also say for prompt poems, if anybody wants more prompt poem action, which who wouldn't after that we talked about it on the Poetry Space with Kathleen Maguki, and that's the current episode, and that was really fun.
That's prose poems with Kathleen Maguki.
Yeah,
yeah, and what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Insta Poets this week. Are we actually going to do that?
We are, if we have time for a date night somewhere in some state.
Yeah, well, we'll see what we end up doing. But yeah, so much fun talking and sharing stuff as always. And now the prompt for this week is this. Are you ready to read it?
Yeah, I want to read this one.
Okay, here we go.
I dare you to write a poem in which you dare someone to do something colorful. So this is, of course, based in part on Dorianne Laux's poem "I Dare You," which I loved. I was really tempted to ask if we could just use one of her brilliant prompts from her book, but we're gonna go with this. That's inspired by her, but in Rattlecast style.
Yes, well, sounds great. Yeah, and we love your prompts. And Dorianne's are fun too. There's all room for all sorts of prompts in this world.
Well,
and,
I definitely enjoyed your discussion on prompts in the interview too. I was like, in the bathroom doing my hair, like I should have been holding up a sign like, yes, this is right. Like I agreed so heartily with everything being discussed about prompts.
Well, that's great. Well, yeah, thanks so much for your prompt. And next week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Molly Peacock. Molly Peacock is one of the great formal poets of the, new formalist era, Canadian poet, national treasure of Canada. She has a new book out, The Widow's Crayon Box. And that's going to be, it's just about to release. And she's going to be the guest next week, Sunday, September 15th, the regular time, along with your poems, daring someone to do something colorful. That's going to be Rattlecast 262, Sunday, September 15th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we'll talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.